Disclaimer: this video contains spoilers for these Halo titles, as well as a little bit of Halo Wars. There are time codes in the description if you want to jump around. Alright, we all set? Excellent. Time to continue this fight. The year is 2007, and Bungie has successfully become an independent company once again. For the last 7 years, Bungie was working under the banner of Microsoft, producing games exclusively for their line of Xbox consoles. This cooperation led to 3 of the most successful video games of all time. 3 groundbreaking titles that had taken the world by storm. Bungie had gained a whole hell of a lot of maturity during these years, working on the biggest stage in the industry and creating the most successful entertainment property of its time. Something so big that it delved deep into transmedia storytelling. The Halo games might be central to the franchise, but that's not all there is. You got tie-in merchandise, you got toys, commercials, live-action trailers, but also, given the sci-fi setting and richness of the universe, there was plenty of license to expand on the franchise in written form. Halo is as much a book franchise as it is a game franchise, with plenty of titles releasing alongside the main trilogy over the last 7 years. The Fall of Reach was released just before the first game, chronicling the titular fall of Reach and the last events leading straight up to the discovery of the first Halo ring. Halo the Flood was a retelling of the first game's story, but now with the liberty to expand on side characters and stories you couldn't get access to during the campaign. Halo First Strike chronicled the events following the first game, all to bridge certain storylines to connect them to the events of the sequel, such as what the Master Chief was up to and how certain characters like Sergeant Johnson survived the events of Combat Evolved. Ghosts of Onyx released in 2006, which formally introduced the concept of Spartan 3s, the next generation of super soldiers after Master Chief and the Spartan 2s. A generation who would be produced at a far greater scale to fight off against the Covenant as part of humanity's grand efforts during the war. And finally, right after Halo 3's release, Joseph Staten himself wrote the novel Contact Harvest, telling the story of Sergeant Johnson and humanity's first encounter with the Covenant. All of these books allowed for great expansion into the larger world of Halo and introduced plenty of new characters and concepts that'd complement the mainline games. One of the biggest ideas introduced in the books was the concept of rampancy. Smart AI like Cortana are programmed to constantly learn. They constantly take in new information and process it, essentially becoming people in some strange way. But the technology is not unlimited. After about 7 years, a smart AI will start to deteriorate. They'll consume so much information that it'll begin to overwhelm them. They will begin to go rampant. They'll essentially destroy themselves through excessive thinking. It's a concept that goes largely unmentioned in the games, but adds a new side to the AI characters, and could prove to be an interesting road to travel on somewhere down the line. Novels weren't the only place Halo fans could expect their universe to be explored, however, because during the development of Halo 3, Joseph Staten worked directly with Peter Jackson and Neil Blomkamp to make a live-action Halo feature film. The world of Halo is gonna head to the big screen. Actually, no it won't. Unfortunately, like a lot of things in Hollywood, this project never really made it past the planning stages. Some ideas managed to persist, however, as Neil Blomkamp stayed on to direct the Landfall promotional videos for Halo 3. And of course, Halo was going to continue on the gaming side of things. For one thing, developer Ensemble Studios were working on a game called Halo Wars, a game that'd finally bring Halo to the genre it was originally designed for: real-time strategy. Yes, you'd be able to control troops and fight Covenant in massive battlefields. Overall, Halo was one of the biggest media franchises around. It had solidified itself as one of the 2000s premier franchises and had made its mark on millions of fans. But things were about to change. The reason Bungie finally went independent was to break from the controlling arm of Microsoft, to break away from Halo. Bungie never wanted to become a Halo machine. Instead, they worked out a deal with Microsoft to create 2 more games after Halo 3, after which they'd move on to something else entirely. Originally, the team was thinking that one of these two games would be Halo 4, picking up Master Chief's story and kicking it off in a new direction for the next team to follow through on. Which is why the legendary ending of Halo 3 sees the forward Unto Dawn, which the Master Chief is currently sleeping on, drifting towards a mysterious Forerunner planet. But the idea of making Halo 4 felt a little strange. Not only were a lot of people at Bungie fatigued with Halo, but they also knew it would be hard to develop investment in a story only to hand it off to someone else. So instead, they'd put their eggs into two other baskets. One of them would be a game set entirely around the events of Reach, a prequel story leading directly to the events of the first game. And the other was another project in partnership with Peter Jackson and his company Wingnut Interactive. This project would see a completely different side to the Halo universe, explored in a whole new way with all new characters. Bungie's goals were set in motion. They had 2 more games to finish to wrap up their journey with Halo, and once Halo 3 was out on store shelves, work began once again for them to really finish this fight. After which, Bungie would let the franchise go. The stories of humanity, the Covenant, Master Chief, and Cortana would all be passed on to a new team to carry the franchise into Halo 4 and beyond. This is where our story continues. This is where the Halo franchise would undergo the most drastic change in its entire lifespan, jumping from the studio that created it to all new faces that'd carry it into the far-flung future. It was now time to begin the next era of Halo. If you're enjoying the videos so far, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. Alright, this fight ain't gonna continue itself, so let's keep it moving. By the time the clock had turned to 2008, the team at Bungie was a little splintered. Bungie's CEO Jason Jones had almost completely separated from Halo by now, instead working hard on Bungie's next game that'd storm over the market. Eventually, he was joined by Jamie Griesemer and some others who would still have some impact on the next 2 Halo games, but would for now mostly be focused on what came next. Most of the team, however, was hard at work on Halo Reach, the big bad conclusion to their run with this universe. Leading this project was none other than Marcus Leto, the art director and co-creator of the entire franchise, being one of 2 people who saw its very inception. Not only would he be able to bring Bungie's story full circle, but he would also lead in a far more traditional sense, for 2 major reasons. Halo Reach featured the biggest team of developers for any Halo game, and they wanted to avoid the management mishaps that led to Halo 2's devastating crunch. This was the big pie, and Bungie wanted to make sure it was baked to perfection. Now, while the game would heavily base itself around the story of the fall of Reach, the developers and writers of the game weren't going to be super fussed about making sure the continuity was airtight. If something contradicted the book but worked spectacularly well for the game, then it was going to go in the game. The trouble was making the story work, making it stick. Frank O'Connor was a head writer on the project for some time, until eventually Martin O'Donnell and Peter O'Brien would take over, having both worked heavily on the story for Halo 3. The challenge they all faced with the story was that anyone who played the game would ultimately know how it ends. Even by knowing the other games, you know that everyone dies on Reach. In that sense, the project was compared to Titanic. Everyone knows the boat's gonna sink. What the movie does to keep you invested is it gets you to care about the characters and build the tension for the moment when the boat does sink. So that was the mandate for Halo Reach. Get players to care about the characters and build up the tension enough so that when the inevitable happens, they're all right there with them. But as Bungie's work during their last stretch with Halo got underway, they got hit with a pretty big speed bump. Their middle bucket, the penultimate game with Peter Jackson, was cancelled, just like the feature film project before it. But they still owed Microsoft another game. They still needed something to fulfill the agreement they had made. Thankfully for them, Microsoft let them make something a bit smaller, something not quite as ambitious as a full game like Halo Reach. In fact, Microsoft was essentially asking for a Halo 3 DLC, an add-on. So Bungie's mandate was clear. Make another game, make it in 1 year, and make it with the existing Halo 3 engine. That last part was really a blessing in disguise, because every other Halo game, including Halo Reach, was using an upgraded engine from the previous game, and that comes with a 1.5 years of testing to make sure the thing works. But with the advent of using the Halo 3 engine, the team had already done a lot of the legwork. They'd done the spit and polish already, meaning they could make small changes here and there to suit the new game, but they didn't have to go through the whole rigmarole of using another engine. The question was, what's the game? After completing the Halo trilogy, Bungie was frustrated, or at least fatigued, by a few major things. First off, Master Chief was a superhero. He had gone through the biggest adventure in the galaxy, and he'd saved the world several times. So, to change the pace for this spin-off, Joseph Staten wanted to go smaller. Given his love of film noir, he wanted to bring a noir detective story to the Halo universe. And the perfect characters to take on that kind of story were the ODSTs. Short for Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, the ODSTs had been in the games before already. They were featured in both Halo 2 and Halo 3. They were stronger than your average Marine, with armor and helmets that looked pretty cool, but they were not Spartans. They were not super soldiers. Underneath the cool armor, they were just regular guys. Making them the center of this game meant that the player could feel a lot more risk and a lot more tension during gameplay. You're not as strong as Master Chief. You can get hurt out there, and yet you're still being put into an extraordinary situation. The other thing some members of the team got fatigued about was linear levels. The first 3 games were all built on linear progression, meaning the game would take you from one set piece to the next. You were constantly moving forward. To break up the potential monotony, the team decided to essentially break this new game into 2 major sections. Sections that you'd alternate through as you played the campaign. One side was the flashbacks, the more traditional linear level design, and the other was the hub world. You'd be placed into this huge map, and you'd be able to explore in any direction in any order, and through which you'd find the entry point to each flashback sequence. It was a daunting prospect for the team to design this huge semi-open world map, but it worked wonders for this completely different feel. A feel that was bolstered by the music. Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore once again re-teamed for the score, and during their efforts the decision was made to not reuse any music from the first 3 games. Instead, given that this is based on different characters and a different tone, the score would be made up of entirely original music, but music that'd still feel like it belonged in the same universe. And since the game was going for a detective noir feel, the score utilized jazz motifs. I mean, you got a bit of a saxophone going off, and the score was heavily built around the piano. But the open world map wouldn't just be the entry point to the main story, it'd also be the entry point to a secondary story that you could also uncover on the side. The team behind the game enlisted the help of 42 Entertainment, who had of course worked on the I Love Bees campaign for Halo 2. But here, they wouldn't be used for another viral marketing campaign. Instead, their talents would be put to use to bring a side story to life. A story that you could uncover almost on accident as you roamed around the barren city. You could ignore this side story and focus on the main campaign, but exploring all of these side activities would bring so much more richness to the world and to the atmosphere. Overall, the team on this game was pretty excited. Joseph Staten would later remark that it was through the creation of this game that his passion for making games was reinvigorated. The fatigue wore off a bit. And that also came in the fact that this game was the scrappy underdog. I mean, Halo Reach was the big tentpole hitter, but this, with its reuse of the Halo 3 engine and assets, this game's team consisted of about 20 people total. A tight-knit group of people working together for a year to get this game through the door. It ultimately led to a short but rather smooth development process. This game came together very, very well, which meant the time was coming to get the word out to audiences. As the press cycle geared up for E3, a countdown suddenly appeared on Bungie.net. The fanbase didn't know exactly what it meant, but it sure looked a lot like a countdown for the reveal of their next game. Until Microsoft decided to cut Halo from their E3 press conference. Yeah, in a disappointing move for fans, Microsoft wanted to make their E3 press conference shorter, and Halo was the game to go. So instead, fans had to wait all the way until September to see something from this new game, something official to get them excited. All of which got kicked off by another countdown on Bungie.net, which also tied to a relatively small viral marketing campaign. It appeared that the countdown was being set up by an AI known as the Superintendent, who would be a major character during the game's side story. The Superintendent would appear often on Bungie.net's forums, posting short and mysterious messages. Most commonly, it'd say the phrase, "Keep it clean." Fans didn't quite know what it meant, but it did lead to something. It led to September 25th, 2008, the one-year anniversary of Halo 3, where Bungie finally released the first teaser for their penultimate Halo game. A teaser aptly titled, you guessed it, Keep It Clean. Do you remember in Halo 2 when the Covenant invaded New Mombasa, and then the Prophet of Regret bugged out and exploded the whole place? Well, as it turns out, this game was going to be set during and immediately after that event, seeing a team of ODSTs navigating the decimated New Mombasa in the aftermath of the invasion. While most of this teaser features security camera footage, it eventually goes to reveal the main ODST soldier, the Rookie, who goes out to brave the decrepit city and face off against the Covenant in a dark and stormy night. Hard cut to the title, Halo 3 Recon. Well, it'd be Halo 3 Recon for a little while. Microsoft had managed to secure the trademark for the name, but the people behind Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon were pissed. They were not happy. So, without much time to waste, the title was changed to more aptly fit the story of the game and to not step on any toes. It was now going to be called Halo 3 ODST. And it got fans pretty excited. It looked different, it looked mysterious, it had quite the atmosphere to it. And something even more exciting was that it promised a new hero and a new campaign. But that, as Bungie feared, was maybe over-promising. I mean, yes, there was going to be a new hero and a new campaign, but the original plan for the game was that it would release in the spring of 2009 at a $30 price point. At $30, Bungie would be under-promising but over-delivering. It'd be a huge surprise when the game hit shelves at half price and it was bigger than people expected. However, Microsoft themselves were pretty impressed by Bungie's work on the game, and they deemed that it was worthy of a full game price tag. So, Halo 3 ODST would instead release in the fall of 2009 at $60. This was quite scary for Bungie. They now felt that they were going to overpromise and underdeliver. But Joseph Staten saw the silver lining. If this game was going to be $60, the remaining and added time would give the team all the license they had to polish and perfect the game. The game was coming together very smoothly, so now the last leg could be used to get it through the door in the absolute best shape it could be. During 2009, there were multiple plates spinning at once for Halo. Like, yeah, Halo 3 ODST and Halo Reach were in development at the same time, but Microsoft was also spending their time putting together an all-new studio to take over the franchise going into the future. A studio that was eventually given the name 343 Industries, obviously derived from 343 Guilty Spark, the monitor of Installation 04 who appeared in the first 3 games. And this new studio was going to feature almost exclusively new faces, namely the studio's founder Bonnie Ross, who managed to impress some people both at Bungie and prospects for 343 through her extensive knowledge of the franchise. One of these people was Kiki Wolfkill, who had been the director of art for Microsoft Studios Studios, and after meeting with Bonnie Ross, she too decided to jump over to help Halo into the future. Dan Ayub joined as an executive producer for the studio. Then you had Ryan Payton, who formerly worked for Kojima Productions on the Metal Gear Solid games before returning stateside, ultimately becoming the creative director for the next Halo game. But there was one familiar face who was going to join 343 and follow Halo wherever it went, and that was Frank O'Connor. Frank O'Connor had been involved in Halo to some extent since Halo 2, being a community manager before getting an even larger role during Halo 3, not only helping with the Iris viral marketing campaign, but also the terminals that you could find during the game itself. He was growing more and more integral to the ongoing story of Halo, being one of the driving forces in expanding the backstory of the Forerunners alongside the creation and eventual activation of the Halo rings 100,000 years ago. Because of this, as much as he loved Bungie and that team, his interest didn't really lie with what they wanted to do next. His real passion was Halo. That was the universe he wanted to be part of. And so he switched over to 343 to help further the franchise into the future. And given his experience with the world, he would become Halo's franchise director, the main guy overseeing where it went next. 343 was being built, a brand new studio who would come together to make brand new games in this universe. But a lot of that's still far in the future. There's still plenty of Halo to look forward to in the now. Specifically, once the clock turned to the end of February and start of March, the real-time strategy game Halo Wars hit store shelves worldwide. It wasn't quite the most celebrated launch internally at Microsoft, considering that Ensemble Studios, the team behind the game, was shut down, leaving them to finish Halo Wars and then go out of business right after. But for those interested in a new side to the Halo universe, they'd need only plug this new disc into their Xbox 360 and experience an all-new genre and all-new journey within the larger universe. Set in the year 2531, Halo Wars takes place 21 years before the events of combat evolved, and it follows the UNSC ship the Spirit of Fire. Throughout massive arenas and large war zones, you'll command troops of UNSC soldiers, vehicles, tanks, and even a squad of Spartans in a long-standing war against the Covenant. But this game doesn't just feature the Covenant. Despite taking place 21 years before the first game, it also sees the Spirit of Fire transported to a mysterious Forerunner planet, a planet infested with the Flood. Across the campaign, Halo Wars centers on a handful of characters. We got Captain Cutter, the no-nonsense leader of the group, Sergeant Forge, the rough-and-tumble soldier who doesn't mind getting into scraps. There's the Spartan Group Red Team, led by Jerome 092, and there's Professor Anders, who leads the more scientific side to the story, and all of them are up against the Arbiter. Not the same Arbiter from Halo 2 and 3. Instead, it's an Arbiter from a generation past. An Arbiter that came before. There's plenty to enjoy with Halo Wars. Critics noted that the gameplay was fun, you face off against a lot of the iconic enemies and vehicles from the other games, and there are some new things flying around as well. There were criticisms for its simplicity, however. Considering the game was released on console, it didn't quite have the liberty to have all the bells and whistles of a traditional PC RTS game. It was more designed to be an entry point into the RTS genre, which it was quite successful at, but long-time RTS players would probably find the gameplay too simple and not all that engaging. But there was one aspect to the game that was praised pretty much universally, and that was the entirely CGI cutscenes animated by Blur Studio. They were far more advanced than anything seen in previous Halo games, and they were visually quite stunning. They even feature some big moments, like the climactic final standoff between Sergeant Forge and the Arbiter.
My face will be the last thing your pathetic eyes ever see.
The game does not necessarily come to the happiest of endings, however. because upon discovering this Forerunner planet, the Covenant want to use its technology to wipe out humanity. So in response, Captain Cutter sends down the Spirit of Fire's main reactor to be ignited inside the planet to destroy it once and for all. And ultimately, Sergeant Forge is the one to pull the trigger manually, sacrificing himself to destroy the planet from the inside. Now, without a reactor, the Spirit of Fire simply drifts through space, light years away from any human world, with the entire crew, including Captain Cutter, heading into stasis. For fans of the franchise, Halo Wars was a very interesting look into a different side to the world, introducing a few new characters, some new aspects to history, and kicking off an all-new story separate from what the games had done before. It's unfortunate that it resulted in the shutdown of Ensemble Studios, making an immediate sequel unlikely, but it was still enough for fans to chew on. There was still plenty more for fans to chew on elsewhere, because back on the mainline saga, Bungie once again re-entered the conversation to get fans excited for their last stretch in the franchise. Because once again, Bungie made an appearance at E3 2009. Thankfully, this time, a showcase of Halo 3 ODST would not be delayed. During Microsoft's press conference, fans would get to have another look at this spin-off game. This time around, it came in two pieces. On one side, you had a full 2-minute trailer. Using the Halo 3 engine, the game would look and feel very similar to the last game, but with new characters, new game modes, and even some slightly modified weapons like the silenced SMG and silenced pistol. There was still plenty new to see with this new game. You were going to be thrust into an entirely different world, a cityscape that you could explore all on your own, fighting any Covenant that got in your way and encountering new stories and characters as you went along. Then, on the other side, Joseph Staten himself jumped on stage during the press conference to demonstrate ODST's gameplay live, showing off both the new Mombasa hub world and the more linear flashback levels. The trailer and stage show got fans pretty excited and pretty jazzed to see this foray into new Halo stories. But this was not all Bungie had for E3, because right after the ODST showcase came to a close, they also revealed the first announcement trailer for what came next. Across only 1 minute, this trailer is haunting. It only consists of one shot circling around this unknown planet. But as we circle around, we see a UNSC ship torn in half, and slowly the entire surface below begins to burn up in flames. Comms chatter is heard, people are freaking out, not sure what's really going on, but they know it's bad on the surface. And it all builds to the reveal of Halo Reach. Bungie's last game in the universe was going to pack a punch, and while this teaser didn't show much, it did let people know that it was going to be big. And while it was still over a year out, this trailer did promise that if you purchased Halo 3 ODST, you'd get an invite to the Halo Reach beta in 2010. Now that's cool. So, before Halo Reach can really storm across the industry, it was time for all of Bungie's promotional focus to be on their next game. Across the last few months, promotion lit up for ODST. 3 separate VDOCs were released prior to the game's debut, all covering a different aspect of the game that fans could get excited for. The first VDOC, Desperate Measures, is the best insight yet into the game's story, introducing the main ODST team, some parameters of their mission, and some of the weapons and enemies you'll face along the way. All of which is narrated by the leader of the team, Buck, who is voiced by none other than Nathan Fillion, who lends his sci-fi chops to a more gruff and weathered commander of this slightly off-kilter team. And now you must join him and the others to face off the Covenant and survive the apocalypse within New Mombasa.
The Covenant have found Earth. They own New Mombasa. Anyone that could have driven them off is dead or gone. I'd say that makes for desperate times. Me and my team? Guess we're the desperate measures.
The second VDOC, titled Bip Bat Bam Welcome to Firefight, is the best look yet at the new multiplayer mode for the game. Halo 3 ODST wasn't going to have a standard multiplayer like the other games. Instead, it was going to have a mode called Firefight, where you and a few friends could join forces and fight wave upon wave of Covenant. Not only would each wave get more difficult, but they would also implement skulls. Skulls, of course, had been involved in both Halo 2 and Halo 3, with each one providing a new effect on the gameplay to change up the fight and, more often than not, make things harder. Now, with each successive round of Firefight, new random skulls would be activated to make each round distinct. It also revealed that if you pre-ordered the game at participating retailers, you'd also be able to play as Sergeant Johnson during Firefight. Now that's worth the price of admission right there. Then, the third VDOC, Terra Incognita, was a quick 8-minute behind-the-scenes video revealing some of the team's design ideas, their ideas behind the story and layout, all to reveal exactly what they were going for. At the same time, during the last month of promotion before release, a tour took place across the USA to promote the game, the Halo 3 ODST Mobile Tour. A vehicle drove around the country, stopping at plenty of cities, and if you managed to get to the truck on time, you'd get your hands on Halo 3 ODST. For just a moment, you'd be able to get a feel for the game for yourself. But then came the final trailer for the game. Following in the footsteps of Halo 3 in more ways than one, Halo 3 ODST also featured a live-action trailer, directed by Rupert Sanders, who directed the Believe campaign for Halo 3. And once again, like that campaign, this trailer is all about separating this from the common perception that this is just an action adrenaline game. There's something more here, something more earnest but also more intense. This particular trailer told the story of an ODST, from the moment of his enlistment to his grueling training, his first battle, all the way to his later years where he's one of the toughest ODSTs around. The visuals are pretty spectacular. I mean, the props and weapons are all entirely game accurate, and they even made a full-scale brute to engage with the main character for a bit. It's crazy. And it managed to sell this other side to the war against the Covenant. Not everyone in these battles is a superhero, but they're all strong and capable in their own way. And now you'd be able to step foot into an ODST's boots yourself, because the time had finally come. After a year of development and quite a long time to polish and improve the game overall, Halo 3 ODST had arrived. While it wasn't nearly as big of an event as the main trilogy was, it still managed to bring people together for midnight launch events across the country. It was, after all, another Halo game. And not only could you purchase the standard Xbox 360 copy, but you could also buy the Collector's Pack, which also included a limited edition UNSC-style Xbox 360 controller, just so you could really wear the UNSC colors before going into battle. And fans were excited. It had been 2 years since they finished the fight, but they were ready to jump back into the world for this all-new story. The clock had now turned to September 22nd, 2009. So plug in that disc and get out your Xbox controller, because it's now time to drop. This game opens really, really strong. As is common for these games, things open with a scripted cutscene, establishing our characters, especially the main character, the Rookie, and getting us set up for the ODST's current mission, all before swiftly transitioning into a partial gameplay section inside of an ODST drop pod. I mean, you can't do anything, but you can move the camera, and you watch as you drop from a UNSC ship in high atmosphere and fall towards the city of New Mombasa. That's right, you yourself get to fall to the surface, and you, with your own eyes, get to watch as the Covenant cruiser swiftly makes a jump into slipspace, sending an explosion across the city, knocking your entire squadron off course.
They popped their chutes! Throw it in hard!
Cut cut to 6 hours later, and you, as the rookie, are now stranded. You're alone in the city at night, and you must traverse the streets to find clues about your team's whereabouts, all so you can reunite. It's just a stark starting point for the game, an interesting and inventive way to kick off this story. And now you're thrown into the weeds with no way of knowing where to go next. Just you, a city, and Covenant stragglers still roaming around to get in your way. And all of this is accomplished in the Halo 3 engine. Yeah, a lot of this game plays identically to Halo 3. The graphics are one-to-one, the gunplay and movement is one-to-one. There's a reason this is called Halo 3 ODST and not just Halo ODST. It is most definitely built off of another game's foundation. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Halo 3 was fun, and by extension, this game is also fun. But there is a sense of deja vu here. Levels like Uplift Reserve here in ODST are very reminiscent of levels like Savo Highway in Halo 3. Sure, it's not identical in terms of map design, but it does feel very familiar. Pretty much every gun in here is lifted from Halo 3. I mean, we got the assault rifle, the shotgun, the rocket launcher. The Covenant weapons make a comeback like the Needler, the carbine, the fuel rod gun, the beam rifle, and the plasma pistol. The red Brute plasma rifle from Halo 2 even makes a comeback. That's cool. The Brute shot is back, along with the Spiker, Mangler, and of course, the Gravity Hammer. In fact, the two new guns are just slightly modified versions of existing guns. You have the silenced pistol and the silenced SMG. They play identically to pistols and SMGs from previous games, but their silenced quality does give the game a certain stealth aspect that's fun. But if you don't care about stealth, take control of one of this game's many vehicles. The Warthog is back, the Mongoose is back, allowing you to traverse the city of New Mombasa much faster than just walking around, which is great when you've been around the block a few times. You get access to a Scorpion tank again in 2 separate levels, and it's still as destructive and powerful as ever. The Ghost is back, alongside the Brute Chopper and even the Banshee. And of course, we got a lot of the same enemies here as well. Brutes, jackals, grunts, and hunters.
Hunters? Oh no, I do not have time for this! Turn around, you bastards. Let me shoot you in the back.
However, there are no elites here. I'm assuming because they weren't built into the base Halo 3 engine. But it also makes sense that they're not around, considering this game takes place during the whole Brute Elite Civil War from the back half of Halo 2. At the very least, you can stumble across some elite corpses around the city, letting you know that they are around, but not currently active in New Mombasa. Now, it wouldn't be a Halo game if the visuals weren't impressive in some way, and like all of the previous games, you're looking at some incredible skyboxes. The city of New Mombasa towers over you at night with clouds from above. There are big cinematic moments like the space elevator finally crumbling after the slip space explosion.
Look! The elevator! Incoming!
What the hell just happened?
Subspace rupture! Must have weakened the support rings.
There's even a moment in one level where you have to travel across this really sketchy bridge. It looks unstable to begin with, but then banshees fly overhead and the whole thing shakes, bringing out a lot of tension. But what the visuals in this game really manage to accomplish is a sense of atmosphere. Roaming around alone in the city at night is a very immersive experience. You feel the isolation, you see the towers soaring high into the sky, you see phantoms fly overhead, and you feel like you gotta take cover so they don't spot you. And all of this is helped along by the soundtrack. Once again, Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore have come through with some incredible music. The light jazz motifs, the light piano motifs, it all helps to create this feeling of both intrigue as well as isolation. But don't fret, there are some bigger action pieces as well. When the action heats up during the levels, you can expect the score to ratchet itself up at the same time. And there are some great action pieces in here. You don't necessarily feel like a god like you might have as Master Chief, but you do at times feel like a hero. But by far one of the coolest aspects to the visual world building in this game is that at night, while you traverse the city alone, you can find places and structures that have been badly damaged. And then upon finding a clue nearby, you get to flash back to the level that caused that destruction in the first place. You get to see how it all went down earlier in the day.
Turning out so bad after all!
But now we have to ask an important question. Since so much of this game is lifted from Halo 3, what's new? What's different? For one thing, there's no dual wielding. Now, in-universe you can lay that down to the fact that the ODSTs maybe aren't as strong as Spartans and can't wield two weapons at once for long periods of time. But in reality, the feature was removed from the game because some people at Bungie hated it. That's really the whole story. Some people didn't like it, and so it finally got phased out. Equipment is also lost from Halo 3. Instead, you'll have to evade or utilize enemy equipment as they drop it. You can't use it yourself. There's a new enemy type here known as the Engineer. They're not aggressive, but they do shield nearby enemies. So if you want to take down a squad of Covenant soldiers, you gotta take out the Engineer first. Then there's the single biggest change during the campaign: you. You're not a Spartan in this game. You're not the ultimate super soldier who can accomplish anything. You're just a guy in a cool-looking suit of armor, but you have no other advancements to speak of. Which means you're far more vulnerable during Covenant encounters. You're a bit smaller, enemies are a bit bigger. Hunters especially are quite intimidating. They can tower over you. But also, you don't have an overshield like Master Chief does. You have a health bar, and the only way to replenish it is by finding health packs across the map. For the first time since Halo CE, you gotta be on the lookout for those guys. But there is an advantage to being an ODST. Since they specialize in both daytime and nighttime operations, you can activate your visor to be able to see the environment much more clearly. It's too dark to see? Turn on your visor and you're right as rain. Enemies are highlighted, objectives are highlighted, even vehicles are highlighted. It's great. This kind of feature is fantastic when traversing the open hub world, since it is entirely set at night. You can roam around, explore different nooks and crannies, and still be able to spot enemies from a mile away. But that's only half of this game's campaign. The other half, of course, is the flashback levels. Levels far more linear as mentioned, but also centering on other characters. Which means, yes, you will also play as those other characters. Now, Halo's done split narratives before, you know, the whole Arbiter story in Halo 2, but this is the first time where we constantly jump from one character to another for each level, following their adventure and seeing what they were up to during the day. And for the first time in one of these games, the game goes to pretty good lengths to establish who each of these characters are. For one thing, the characters talk during gameplay sections. Sure, the rookie is still a silent protagonist, but everyone else, they chat all the time. This was a feature Joseph Staten wanted to add. He wanted you to be able to hear your character's voice during gameplay, something Halo hadn't done. You know, Master Chief went silent during gameplay, as did the Arbiter. But now, this ODST squad is talkative, they got dialogue options for plenty of scenarios, and it just livens up the gameplay in a lot of ways. Which is also helped by the fact that this game's got a pretty great cast. A cast that is also a bit of a Firefly reunion. I mean, you got Buck, the team leader. He's been around the block a few times and is a bit jaded by the horrors of war. As mentioned before, he's voiced by Nathan Fillion. Dutch is the heavy. He knows his guns and he knows how to use them. When you first take control of him, he's wielding a Spartan laser. Dude's tough. And he's voiced by Adam Baldwin. Mickey is the explosives expert, and as such, he just wants to blow everything up all the time. time. He's voiced by Alan Tudyk. Romeo is the sniper. He likes to stay back and pick off targets from a distance, voiced by Nolan North. Then you have Veronica Dare, who is not a playable character in the campaign, but she is ostensibly the mission leader, an agent of Oni who has her own mission and agenda. She's voiced by Tricia Helfer, and this character even has a bit of a romance subplot with Buck.
Take my advice, rookie. You ever fall for a woman?
Make sure she's got both.
There's even a stretch where you fight beside her during the penultimate level, and if you can kill things well enough, she'll take notice.
I'm impressed.
Yeah? Well, I'm playing on easy. With these characters, you'll take on a brief and simple story about trying to get the band back together, all the while discovering the truth about Dare's mission in New Mombasa, which involves both the superintendent AI that runs the place and the new engineer creatures. And while you can certainly enjoy the base campaign for what it is, following through the story missions and reuniting the ODST squad, the game brings out a whole other level once you start to dig into the side story. Across the New Mombasa open world, you can find 29 of these little terminals. They'll either be highlighted yellow if your visor is on, or you can be on the lookout for ringing phones or coin and ticket spewers. With each terminal you find, you will unlock a small piece to the side story. The story of Sadie, her father, and the superintendent AI codenamed Virgil. And this entire story took place the day before the main game's events, during the Covenant invasion of New Mombasa. There's chaos across the streets. Sadie is taken from one end of the city to the other, encountering colorful characters at every juncture. Specifically the character Mike, who manages to be a not-so-bad dude to help Sadie in her mission. A life-or-death mission for Sadie to find her father, save Virgil, and escape New Mombasa unharmed. Because not only is the city under attack by Covenant, but corrupt police officials are using the chaos to their advantage. All of this is told mostly through audio logs that you can listen to while traversing the city, but there are also visuals in the form of these sketches to give a vague idea of what things looked like as these events unfolded. Exploring this side story adds a lot to the main campaign. Not only do you get a sense of the people who were once here in the city before and during the Covenant invasion, but upon discovering all 29 audio logs, you'll even become a participant in the story. Because during the penultimate campaign level Data Hive, you come across this guy. You fight some Covenant alongside him, it's pretty hunky-dory. But eventually, it's revealed that he was actually working for the corrupt police officials.
Sorry, friend. You know way too much.
In a second, the green friendly indicator turns red as he tries to kill you. Suddenly, you're not just an observer of this story that's over, you just became an active part of its conclusion. Not to mention the fact that the side story also includes a bit of an investigation around the engineer creatures, specifically how they might not be the bad guys. Which all leads to the very same reveal during the main campaign. The engineers are not evil. They were enslaved by the Covenant to do their bidding. And now this particular engineer creature not only has a bunch of information regarding the Covenant, but has also absorbed all of the information within the superintendent. This creature ostensibly is Virgil. This is a reveal that happens no matter if you uncover the audio logs or not. But with the knowledge you gain from the side story, there's a whole added element to this reveal. On top of the fact that this was Veronica Dare's whole mission, to retrieve the superintendent and free the engineer from the Covenant. And that's what the whole last mission is about. After traversing the city for who knows how long, the last level is all about getting out. There's a slow warthog run, there's even a scorpion run, and the whole thing comes to a close as you fight 3 waves of enemies in this courtyard, waiting for an escort to get you out. It's a fairly effective way to close out the story, not to mention the sense of scale this finale shows off. It goes to show that even when Halo goes for a smaller story, it can still be absolutely huge. I mean, there are Covenant cruisers flying overhead, a super carrier emerges from the clouds in the distance. I mean, it's enormous. And it all comes to a close when you reunite with the entire ODST squad and finally escape New Mombasa. All as the Covenant begin to unveil the massive circular structure that'll be hugely important to the story of Halo 3. And then of course you have one final scene. One final scene featuring none other than Sergeant Johnson, who will now use Virgil's knowledge of New Mombasa and the Covenant to help turn the tide. All as a direct lead-in for the final fight in Halo 3. And that's Halo 3 ODST. It's a pretty fun time. You have some neat characters, some cool set pieces, Bungie's skyboxes and sense of scale is on full display at every moment. Reviews for the game were fairly positive as well. Critics praised the gameplay, the simple story, and the atmosphere around every corner. And sales were once again fantastic for ODST. While it wasn't as big as the 3 Halo games before it, it still managed to be the top-selling Xbox 360 game that year, with more than 2.5 million copies sold in its first 2 weeks, totaling $125 million. But there was a bit of disappointment around the game's release, specifically regarding the price tag. Was this really worth $60? Was this really worth the price of a full game? Even hardcore Halo fans could be found disappointed in what is essentially a full-priced expansion. You know, the Halo 3 engine was starting to show its age by now, even though it had only been used for 2 years. But it seemed that Bungie's fears of overpromising and underdelivering were justified, because some were a little disappointed in the final result. For the first time in the franchise's history, a Halo game was not revolutionary in some way. It was still fun, it was still enjoyable, but it didn't reinvent the wheel. But separating from that, the game is still beloved by a great many fans out there. People who enjoy the small-scale story, the atmosphere, the side story with the audio logs, there's plenty to get into with ODST. And there's plenty of replayability as well. Like all of the other games, this one also sports multiple difficulty settings: easy, normal, heroic, and legendary. And upon completing the game on legendary, you get a bonus cutscene right at the end featuring the Prophet of Truth, eyeing what the Covenant have been discovering under the city of New Mombasa. Skulls once again make a comeback for the campaign, but unlike all of the previous games, the skulls here are not found in hidden corners across the levels. Instead, every skull is available from minute 1 through the main menu, meaning you could take on a lasso playthrough on day 1 if you so chose. At the same time, the game sports a co-op mode, 2 people on split screen and 4 people online. Although critics noted that it probably wouldn't be a good idea to play the game with a friend for your first go. Once you have 1 or more ODSTs running around with you in New Mombasa, it absolutely takes away from the atmosphere and isolation. Second time around though, go for it. And then of course you have this game's multiplayer mode, Firefight, a wave-based game mode where you and 3 friends can fight off against Covenant waves again and again and again, with randomized skulls on each round to change up the gameplay. Firefight was beloved by many fans after the game's release, and while there was no matchmaking, if you had 3 friends to tag along with, you'd definitely spend a lot of hours tearing into wave after wave of Covenant. But what if you wanted to scratch the competitive multiplayer itch? What if you wanted to dive into some PvP battles? Well, have no fear, because every copy of ODST was shipped with a second disc, including all 21 multiplayer maps for Halo 3, and 3 all-new maps that you could only get with ODST. Meaning there was a lot more value to this purchase beyond just the campaign for ODST. You could tear up battlefields day in and day out. But now, with ODST on store shelves and reviews being fairly positive for this latest installment in the Halo franchise, there was only one more stop on Bungie's farewell tour. They had one more game on the way, and while it was still a year out, fans were already getting geared up to witness the fall of Reach with their very own eyes. And internally at Bungie, some members of the team immediately jumped from the end of ODST to be part of the Halo Reach team. Now, there were some exceptions, like the fact that Joseph Staten decided to pivot and spend his time working on Bungie's next game, and even among those who stayed on for Halo Reach, it was a noticeably more taxing project. Halo 3 ODST was a breath of fresh air. It was a smaller experiment that a smaller team could do a lot of fun things with. But Halo Reach once again had the baggage of being a full game. Not to mention the fact that some at Bungie were getting sick of Halo all around. But they had to put their best foot forward, because this was their last hurrah in the franchise, their last game in this world, and they wanted to make it count. And without any further time to waste, before 2009 drew to a close, marketing for Halo Reach finally kicked off. Because at that year's Video Game Awards on December 12th, Bungie debuted an all-new trailer for their final chapter. Across 2.5 minutes, this trailer shows off an in-game cinematic introducing us to an all-new team of Spartans. 5 Spartans to be exact, with the player character joining as Spartan number 6. There isn't much to this trailer, but it does show off a stark new look for the world and sees the team fly off towards a mission that we all know will be their doom. All before closing out with a brief shot of a Covenant elite activating an energy sword. Oh, things are about to get real. And with the promise of the multiplayer beta coming sometime in the coming year, fans were already getting excited for their next return to the world of Halo. Promotion did not slow down as 2010 kicked off. Bungie kept the machine rolling with 2 VDOCs in the first few months of the year. Firstly, you had the VDOC titled Once More Unto the Breach. Across almost 8 minutes, this first VDOC provides the best look yet at Halo Reach, revealing some of the team's inspiration for the story, their inspiration for the new designs, but also going full tilt into the new technology. Better facial animation, motion capture, better textures, more polygons than ever before. This VDOC went a long way to say that this game will look better than any other Halo game before it, that this will be the definitive final chapter.
This is the definitive Halo made by the people who created Halo.
The second VDOC, released in April 2010, was titled Carnage Carnivale. This time around, Bungie pulls the curtains back on Halo Reach's multiplayer, revealing new weapons, new game modes, new abilities, and even some glimpses at some of the new maps. All of which goes to show that the exciting Halo multiplayer that fans have come to know and love is back. For the first time since Halo 3, there was going to be a new Halo multiplayer experience. But marketing for Halo Reach didn't just center on selling the new and fun features within the game itself. Like some of the previous Halo titles, this game also featured an ambitious and creative marketing campaign, which all kicked off at the end of April with a new website created by Microsoft. It was quite simple, stating on screen, "Augmentation begins April 28th, 2010. And once the clock turned to April 28th, a full live-action trailer was released online for Halo Reach. Directed by Noah Muro, this trailer is aptly titled Birth of a Spartan, and it depicts the teen trainee Carter A259 being converted into a super soldier as part of the Spartan 3 program, including some genetic augmentation and even providing him with a suit of armor to become the leader of Noble Team. The same team you would follow during the campaign of Halo Reach. Once again, Halo jumps in with a very different type of marketing approach. This franchise is on one hand all about the action and adrenaline, but at the same time, it doesn't shy away from the darker, more serious corners of the universe. And like the live-action trailers before it, this trailer caused nothing but excitement and anticipation among fans. But Halo Reach wasn't all fans were paying attention to during 2010. Sure, it might be the big Halo title set to release later that year, but it wasn't everything. Because of the fact that the Xbox 360 was well into its lifespan by now, Microsoft made the decision to cut support to the original Xbox Live. There were plenty of casualties to this, but none were more significant than Halo 2. Being the first Halo game to utilize Xbox Live, it was a historic game, essentially defining console multiplayer for years to come. And now, since the original Xbox Live support was being cut, Halo 2 multiplayer was going to go offline. But not if the fans could help it, because while support was cut on April 15th, 2010, some fans realized that if they just never disconnected or turned off their Xbox, they could keep playing Halo 2 online. In fact, 2 weeks after the support was shut down, there were still 14 people playing on Halo 2 multiplayer. And these 14 were eventually dubbed as the Noble 14, the final players to play on the original Halo 2 multiplayer. But all good things must come to an end, as slowly but surely each of these final 14 players were disconnected, until finally on May 10th, almost a month after the support ended, the final player, Apache Enforcer, was disconnected, ending both Halo 2's multiplayer and the original Xbox Live. It was the end of an era in a lot of ways. Halo 2 was a defining game for online multiplayer, and while Halo 3 was certainly able to fill the bill for a lot of players, there was nothing quite like what Halo 2 had to offer. Thankfully for the Noble 14, however, each of them were given Halo Reach beta keys, in part to bribe them to stop playing Halo 2, but also as kind of a reward for being loyal to the game. And now that Halo 2 was offline, a whole new multiplayer experience jumped in its place. Because from May 3rd to May 20th, 2010, the Halo Reach multiplayer beta went online. Anyone who purchased Halo 3 ODST would get an invitation and be able to test out for themselves this new taste of Halo multiplayer. And boy was this beta absolutely massive. Across its run, over 2.7 million unique players took part, playing a grand total of over 6 million gameplay hours. And in one final stat that'll almost literally blow your mind, there were over 1.1 billion registered kills. That's a lot of murder. It was by and large the biggest multiplayer beta ever, especially in Bungie's history, surpassing the already immense multiplayer beta for Halo 3. And it was greatly entertaining for fans, getting to access some new weapons, some new game types, as well as provide feedback to the developers to improve and ultimately perfect the Halo Reach multiplayer experience in time for launch. Excitement only built up after this, as once again Bungie made an appearance at E3 to show off Halo Reach in all its glory. During Microsoft's press conference, a full 5-minute gameplay demo was shown off to attendees, to get them more excited than ever for this next chapter in the Halo world. Revealing a brief glimpse towards a campaign level, seeing you fight alongside the rest of Noble Team, facing off against familiar Covenant enemy types, including the long-awaited return of the Elites. All before revealing the most exciting aspect to the demo, spaceflight combat. There isn't much in this glimpse, but it was sure to get fans excited for the possibility of soaring around space fighting off against the Covenant. The gameplay demo wasn't all Bungie showed off at E3 though. That same day, an E3 trailer was released, mostly featuring footage from the demo itself, showing off new angles of the action and some more exciting footage of spaceflight combat. On top of all of that, 2 days later, Bungie unveiled a 1-minute trailer for Firefight 2.0. That's right, Firefight, the wave-based game mode from Halo 3 ODST, was gonna make a comeback in Halo Reach. This time you play as a team of Spartans fighting wave after wave of Covenant. Of all the games shown off at E3 2010, there were none as exciting as Halo Reach. It had a huge presence during the event and managed to get fans old and new excited for this new chapter. But just because E3 is over doesn't mean the marketing's gonna let up. In fact, the marketing is gonna get even more intense in the final months leading up to Reach's September 14th release. For one thing, Bungie made an appearance at Comic-Con that summer to tease some further aspects of the game, including the multiplayer and even some new ideas in the campaign, including an all-new vehicle.
And we're gonna reveal one more new thing. It's a brand new vehicle you guys have never seen before. I'll just run over here real quick. The forklift.
Hell, even Red vs. Blue got involved in the marketing. As part of the Halo Reach promotional efforts, Rooster Teeth was contacted by Bungie to make a Red vs. Blue sketch revealing the fact that Halo Reach's multiplayer was going to feature a remake of the map Blood Gulch from Halo Combat Evolved. That map, of course, being the main filming ground for Red vs. Blue in their earliest seasons. Featuring that same trademarked Red vs. Blue humor, some of the iconic characters, all in a new game and a new engine. This was quickly followed by a 1-minute campaign trailer, giving audiences the best looks yet at the cinematics, all the while revealing very little about what the story was going to offer. At the same time, 2 more VDocs were released by Bungie, teasing new elements of the game both on the campaign and multiplayer side. The VDoc A Spartan Will Rise features an in-universe dissertation on every member of Noble Team, delivered by none other than Dr. Catherine Halsey, the creator of the Spartan 2 program. And then the VDoc Forge World revealed a huge upgrade to Halo 3's beloved Forge mode. After the team at Bungie saw all of the crazy creative stuff people were making in Halo 3's Forge mode, Halo Reach went out of its way to maximize what people could do with this tool. Not only are the controls more refined, with new abilities, new things you couldn't do in Halo 3, but Forge World itself is a massive map, bigger than anything else Halo multiplayer has ever done, allowing you to create absolutely insane areas of immense scale. Forge was easily 20 times bigger and more intricate than it was for Halo 3. Fans were no doubt incredibly excited to get their hands on these new tools and play around with them for themselves.
We realized that Reach was our swan song to Halo, and what better way to do that than to let people do what we've been doing all along, which is creating new cool maps.
But following this, as part of the last stretch of promotion for Halo Reach, Bungie decided to follow in the footsteps of the Birth of a Spartan trailer, as well as many other campaigns, and close out this game's promotion with a series of live-action shorts, all under the banner Remember Reach. 3 shorts were released at first, chronicling the story of Reach from the day before everything went south. Each of these 3 shorts followed a different pairing or group of characters on the planet Reach, each a little unsettled in some way, but all of them expecting to live on another day. It gets you into the mind of the people on Reach, their day-to-day lives, their struggles, all before slowly pulling the curtain back to reveal that nothing on this planet will ever be the same again. All 3 of these shorts were then combined into a single 3-minute trailer, featuring the ending taglines, "Remember when there was a tomorrow. Remember where it all began. Remember Reach." These teasers are haunting, letting you into the lives of several people on Reach before the inevitable is set to happen, before the whole planet gets destroyed. But these were not the only live-action shorts released before Halo Reach's debut, because they were joined by one more to shine at least a small light at the end of the tunnel. A final live-action short titled Deliver Hope. Starting as a 1-minute short before expanding into a full 2-minute trailer, this final piece of Remember Reach marketing sees the Noble Team Spartan Kat rushing through a horde of Covenant with a bomb in hand, all before she's taken out, leaving your character Noble 6 to take charge and get the bomb inside of a Covenant cruiser to destroy it. There's a sense of melancholy to the trailer, but unlike the other Remember Reach trailers, this one makes plain that even during humanity's darkest hour, there are still those who will fight until the very bitter end. Which meant the time had now come to experience the beginning for yourself, to see the fall of Reach with your very own eyes. After 9 years since the release of Halo Combat Evolved, Bungie had now gone back to the beginning, telling the story of everything that led up to the discovery of the first Halo ring. And fans were more excited than ever. There was a bittersweet feeling with this being Bungie's last game in the series, but with the promises of the campaign, the promises of everything multiplayer had to offer, fans were ultimately only excited to jump back into this world. Midnight launch events were held around the country as Halo fans lined up around the block to experience both the first and last chapter in Bungie's story. And once again, like every previous Halo game, you could purchase Halo Reach in several different ways. You could buy the standard Xbox 360 copy of the game, or you could take home the limited edition, held in an Oni black box, featuring an artifact bag from Dr. Catherine Halsey, a special elite skin for multiplayer, and an embroidered Spartan 2 patch, among other things. And then of course you have the Legendary Edition, which contains all of that, but also a full Noble Team statue made by McFarlane Toys, and even access to a Halo Reach documentary through Halo Waypoint. Separate from that, you can get a Halo Reach themed Xbox 360 with a copy of the game, all to really sink your teeth into the universe one last time. The clock had now turned to September 14th, 2010, which is incidentally 117 after after the multiplayer beta closed. Now, while that is most likely a coincidence, it is taken as a reference to Master Chief's number 117. Now it's time to pop that disc into your Xbox 360 and experience the last Halo story Bungie had to tell. It's time to witness the fall. From minute one, you know how this game's gonna end. Not just because of the other games or the expanded lore surrounding everything, but because the opening cutscene reveals the planet of Reach absolutely decimated, and in the midst of scorched continents sits a broken Spartan helmet. A helmet that belongs to you. The entire game is essentially a flashback, all building back up to that moment, that ultimate endpoint. But for now, let's live in the present. It's July 2552 and you have just joined Noble Team on the planet of Reach. A team of mostly Spartan 3s, each with their own expertise and personalities. I mean, this game's not winning any awards for character writing, but there's enough to each of them to tell them apart. We got Carter, the straight-laced commander who knows how to get the job done. Kat, the technology expert and probably the smartest one of the whole team. June, the sniper, likes to pick things off from afar. Emil, the wise ass who likes to get up close and personal. George, the heavy with a heart of gold. He'll make as big of a mess as he can and then hug you later, maybe. He's also the only member of the team who's a Spartan 2, the same generation as Master Chief. And finally, there's Noble 6, otherwise known as you. And I really do mean you, because Noble 6 here is a blank slate. Sure, he's got some lines here and there, but overall this guy is as bare bones as possible so you can fill that Spartan armor yourself. Customization is a big feature in this game. You can create your own Spartan with a wide variety of different pieces, colors, visors, you name it. There are plenty of ways you can make your Spartan unique, and that Spartan you create will be your playable character in the campaign. So it really is you. For the purposes of this video, I decided to go mostly with the default look, just with a bit of red to add some flair. Which brings us to the big question. Why are we all on Reach? Well, initially, the mission is to scour the area in search of human insurrectionists that have been causing trouble. But in due time, you realize something horrifying. The Covenant are on Reach. Somehow, the planet they were never supposed to find has been found. And so you and the rest of Noble Team must lead the charge and face off against the Covenant invasion of Reach in what will become humanity's most desperate hour. This game is a fair amount darker than any previous Halo game. Even though there is still a sense of humor, everything here is far grittier and more grounded, and that is especially true with the visuals. The color grade here is quite muted. The textures are all far more detailed, especially when it comes to weapons. The assault rifle specifically gets a big upgrade here. While it all looked like one solid device in the previous games, here it looks like it's been augmented with various pieces that have been attached patched over a smaller skeleton. At the same time, the Covenant in this game don't speak English, in part to harken back to the first Halo game where only the grunts spoke English, but also to add to the scary factor. The Covenant have started to become significantly funnier as the games have gone on, especially during the Arbiter missions in Halo 2. But here, the Covenant are supposed to be this monstrous, intimidating force, so removing all of the humanity from them is a good step to making them scarier. But there's still some humor to be found with these guys. You know, if you shoot a grunt in the backpack, it might wind up going flying, and that's always entertaining. Cutscenes here are also far more grounded. In a very distinct directorial decision, it feels like at every moment that a camera could credibly be filming all of these events. Sure, it's a video game, but if this were real, this is how it could be filmed. I mean, you got sections with a cameraman following our heroes, plenty of moments see cameras mounted to the side of ships, they even use security camera footage. And for that reason, I think these might be some of the best looking cutscenes yet. Barring Halo 2, I still think that one's the best, but this one gets up there. Add on to them the fact that there's so much more detail and nuance to the facial animations than ever before, and you got yourself some movie quality stuff right here. In fact, the game overall looks fantastic. Once again, Bungie knocks it out of the park with skyboxes. Seeing a ringed planet off in the distance, clouds of smoke and fire billowing from far away, and there are also plenty of different locations to give the game a ton of variety. Like ODST before it, there are really no Forerunner structures here like there were in the first 3 games. Instead, this is a big exploration into what humanity might be building in 500 years. We got big skyscrapers, we got smaller villages, and we even have some nightclubs? That's cool. It all goes a long way to make the game visually interesting at every step of the way. You never get bored looking at this game, which is always a good thing. The game also sounds great. Everything in here is given a lot more power on the audio side of things. The assault rifle especially sounds significantly more powerful than it did in Halo 3. Take a listen. On top of that, when you get hit in this game, you get hit hard, especially when the Covenant brings out heavy artillery. If a Wraith shell or a big blast hits nearby, it's gonna knock out all sound for a few seconds, sending you into a stir. Muffled sound even becomes a staple during one particular level. At one point during the campaign, you're out in space on a Covenant ship. Because of that, you're not only fighting in low gravity, but since there's no sound in space, there's almost nothing you can hear. It's just a great little design choice. At the same time, the music is top tier. Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore have once again brought their A-game to the soundtrack. Like ODST before it, this game features mostly new music, stuff that's never been heard before. But there are a few moments where familiar tracks begin to pop in, giving you that sense of nostalgia. Like how, once again, A Walk in the Woods from Halo CE makes a comeback, meaning we now have 4 distinct versions of that tune. You got A Walk in the Woods from Halo CE, Heretic Hero from Halo 2, Another Walk from Halo 3, and now in Halo Reach, we have Walking Away. It's quite fitting, honestly. The music in this game, while still filled with action motifs and big percussion pieces, also carries a lot of melancholic sound to it. There are not only some new emotional pieces that elevate plenty of moments in here, but there's also another reprise of Unforgotten from Halo 2, also known as Never Forget from Halo 3. This time around, it features more of the guitar, providing a slightly more hopeful version of the track, all under the title We Remember. overall, the new and returning tracks here, the entire vibe of this score, it's very bittersweet. And it's for one very distinct reason. This is Bungie's swan song. This is it. This is their last time in the Halo pot, which is why they pulled out all the stops. The gameplay here, like all of the other Halo games, is a lot of fun. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel or anything like the first 3 games did, but what Bungie's done here is they've taken everything that's worked well in the previous games and perfected it. Everything Halo's ever done well is now brought into one big final package, with some differences. Unlike the other games, this one sports the use of objective markers from time to time, pointing you to where you want to go next. At the same time, your current objective appears at the top of your display, letting you know what's up next on the docket. On top of that, you can pick up Marines as squad mates during each campaign level. They'll join you and help take down Covenant right beside you. You have night vision now, so if things get too dark, just pop that on and you'll be able to navigate the game's darker areas. You also have new armor abilities. Like the equipment from Halo 3, this game allows you to change up the fight with various abilities to go about every encounter in a number of different ways. You have Armor Lock, which makes you completely invincible at the cost of any and all movement. You can create a hologram, send a clone of yourself to distract the bad guys. Sprinting is an ability here, allowing you to move a bit faster. A first for the series. You even get a jetpack a couple times, allowing you to traverse areas in all new ways. And thanks to the enemies, the fight is still greatly entertaining. Once again, the AI is top-notch. Every encounter can be completely different, but it's also just nice to be fighting familiar Covenant again. The elites are back, the grunts are back, the jackals are back, hunters are back and stronger than ever, even the brutes are back, kind of being a mixture of their Halo 2 and Halo 3 appearances. Hell, the engineers from ODST even make an appearance a couple times. But they're also joined by a bunch of new enemies. You have skirmishers, jackal variants with no shield, but they'll skulk around the battlefield. There are skirmishers with smaller arm shields that run around towards the end of the campaign, and then there are a couple creatures native to Reach that might try and murder you at some points. And how do you take all these guys down? Well, with a huge arsenal of weapons at your disposal. This game might have a bigger weapons cache than any of the previous games. You have the familiar UNSC weapons like the assault rifle, magnum, sniper rifle, and rocket launcher, alongside the familiar Covenant weapons, the plasma rifle, plasma pistol, needler, fuel rod gun. 2 brute weapons even make a comeback, the spiker and gravity hammer. And of course, you can't really have a Halo game without the energy sword. Ignore the fact that ODST didn't have the energy sword for this bit. But they're all joined with a wide variety of new toys to change up the gameplay in big ways. The big new UNSC weapon is the DMR, essentially a variant of the battle rifle from Halo 2, only this gun fires 1 shot at a time instead of 3. It's best for firing on enemies from a distance, and making sure you're steady while doing so. Rapid fire will make your shots less accurate thanks to the reticle bloom. The same can be said of the new Needle rifle. That's right, the Needler gets a scoped long-range upgrade in this game, and it's a beast, let me tell you. It's especially fun to take out those drone bug guys, because they will actually explode when hit with these things. It's great. The Covenant also have a new machine gun called the Plasma Repeater, a bigger variant of the plasma rifle. The Focus rifle is this sick laser cannon that blasts through enemies like nobody's business. You got a concussion rifle firing quick explosive blasts. The UNSC has a counter to that with the grenade launcher. The UNSC also has a target locator, which isn't as much a gun as it is a pinpoint machine to take down big Covenant artillery. Simply lock onto a target and an orbital strike will do the rest. And I can promise you now, that is definitely not the only time you will be using the target locator. No siree, you will absolutely get it later in the campaign. Vehicles are once again a big focus here. We got the classics like the Warthog, which even has a rocket turret variant this time. The Mongoose is back, the Scorpion is back, the Ghost is back, but they all pale in comparison to the absolute greatest vehicle in the entire franchise, bar none, the forklift. These guys are the best. They're slow, they're cumbersome, you can't shoot when driving. I mean, it's really got it all. But where this game really hits is in the aerial vehicles. For one level of the game, you get access to a Falcon, and you get to fly around a city, taking out Covenant left and right. This level is actually quite creative on a game design level, because as you fly around this burning city, you're given a series of objectives to complete. You got 3 main objectives that take you to different places around the city, and then a few secondary objectives. The main objectives are the same every time you play the game, but the secondary objectives, those can change. There's a library of a handful of secondary objectives, and the game will randomly assign a few to you during the level. There's even one that features Buck from ODST, solidifying the fact that he was on Reach during its collapse, something he references a couple times during that game. So, anytime you play this level, it might look slightly different, it might play slightly differently. But on top of all of these vehicles comes the game's biggest revelation, the most exciting new addition to the franchise this game has to offer: space combat.
Ignition confirmed.
During the 6th level of the campaign, you fly out into space on a Saber, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, you can soar around this cool looking area, you're fighting Banshees and Seraphs and Phantoms, you got guns, you got missiles, you have the ability to get completely turned around, it's great. And while you only get space combat for one level, it's definitely one of the game's biggest highlights. But without a doubt, the game's #1 highlight, the best aspect this time around, is the story. This game arguably has the most investing story of any of the Halo games so far, and it really kinda sneaks up on you. You know, the first half of the campaign is pretty standard fare. You gotta take out Covenant bad guys, you gotta clear wide open areas, fight in small corridors. There are interesting aspects like the first introduction of Dr. Catherine Halsey in a game, who we already know is not a good person from the fact that she captured kids and turned them into super soldiers, all of which ties into ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, who orchestrated that whole thing. So on both counts, these two entities are morally bad. This game doesn't really get into that, at least not in a super deep way. Instead, it hints at George's history with Halsey, given that he was one of the stolen children in the Spartan 2 program. At the very least, we know that these guys are a bit sketchy. The intelligence apparatus around the UNSC is far from the most sound organization in the world. What is sound, though, is the sense of scale. Despite being a prequel set before the galaxy-threatening events of the Halo trilogy, this game is huge. There are big cinematic moments like driving a mongoose through a couple scarabs. There's a cutscene featuring a UNSC army going up against a Covenant army. One of the biggest cutscenes, though, has to be the one where a UNSC frigate is called in to blast a Covenant structure, until things go sideways and it itself is blasted by a Covenant supercarrier. A supercarrier that absolutely dwarfs the area. You can't even fit the thing into one shot, it's so big. But while the first half of the game features a lot of fun and games, partway through the story, the entire tone shifts. It all comes at the end of the space level, because the whole point of that mission was to get a slipspace drive rigged to blow onto the Covenant supercarrier to destroy it. But at the end of the level, it's damaged and has to be detonated manually. So George, the heavy of the team, decides to stay behind, throwing you out into space before ultimately detonating the bomb.
Tell him to make it count.
And you simply watch as the slipspace drive ignites, with George in the middle of it. Now that sounds kinda rough, but it accomplished the mission, right? Well, unfortunately for everyone else, an entire Covenant army appears right after, beginning a full-scale invasion of Reach. Not only has George just died, but we realize that he died in vain. The Covenant have arrived, and from here on out, everything just gets worse and worse. You manage to fall to the planet thanks to your re-entry unit, only to find that cities on the surface have been riddled with bodies. Covenant are storming the streets, towers are collapsing all around you, and more Covenant ships are arriving to glass the surface, wiping out everything in their path. There's even a big gameplay section where you man a Falcon's turret, watching as Covenant storm every corner of the city of New Alexandria. The invasion is in full swing, and the casualties just keep coming.
Where does he get off calling a demolition a priority one?
First George, now Cat. That makes 2 members of Noble Team casualties in this invasion. And that moment is pretty sudden. It's completely unexpected, both for the team and for you. It's also a little haunting because it's just an immediate death. There's no question about it. Cat, the technology expert, is gone. And because of this, you begin to realize that Reach is lost. There's no fighting back against this force. There is no winning this battle. Which means the priority for the rest of Noble Team winds up changing. You are now set to escort a package off-world to secure the future of humanity. Dr. Halsey herself is the one presenting this package to you. A package that contains vital information from a secret Forerunner artifact under Reach's surface. But the ultimate question is, what is the package?
This AI is its custodian, and she has chosen you as her couriers.
Chosen? By an AI?
By this AI, yes. Her measure of you carries as much weight as my own, perhaps more.
That's right, it's Cortana, the AI that will be instrumental in the next leg of the fight against the Covenant. And so, the final level of the game sees you and the remaining members of Noble Team escorting Cortana to the UNSC ship the Pillar of Autumn so she can be successfully taken off-world. And it's a mission that sees the end of Noble Team. Well, except June, because he was sent to escort Halsey off-world, so he makes it out. Everyone else, though? Not so lucky. While flying a Pelican, Carter gets injured and winds up sacrificing himself to destroy a Scarab.
You're on your own, Noble. Carter out.
And Emil is eventually picked off by elites, and while he gives it his all, he's no match. However, it is thanks to these efforts that you successfully manage to reach Captain Keyes and deliver Cortana to him just in time. And in one final move, you stay behind and take control of a massive artillery gun, taking out Covenant ships to allow the Pillar of Autumn to escape. And with that final push, the Pillar of Autumn manages to blast away from Reach, far out into the stars.
Cortana, all I need to know is, did we lose them?
I think we both know the answer to that.
And over the credits, we watch as the Pillar of Autumn flies towards the first Halo ring, setting into motion the story of the original trilogy and the events that would lead to the end of the Human Covenant War. But that's not it. As the credits come to a close, you return to gameplay, back as Noble 6 on Reach, with the simple objective laid out at the top of your display: survive. For the final stretch, you are now in an open arena, facing off against hordes of Covenant for as long as you can. The longer you go, the more opposition you'll face, and the stronger they'll get. It's a test of time. You fight for as long and as hard as possible until the inevitable happens. And in the final moment, you see your helmet, broken and atop a scorched world, just like it was at the very beginning. But the game ends on a message of hope. It flashes to the future, where grass has grown on Reach again. While you and the rest of Noble Team may have died, you set into motion the events that would save humanity. You put the pieces in place that allowed Master Chief to end the war and save the galaxy. While you might not be adorned with medals or praise or even live to see it happen, it's thanks to you that humanity is able to live on.
But you belong to Reach. Your body, your armor, all burned and turned to glass. Everything. Except your courage. That you gave to us. And with it, we can rebuild.
And that right there is the end of Halo Reach. Across 5 to 7 hours, Bungie managed to tell perhaps their best story yet. The story of one team that managed to save the world, all by witnessing the end of it. It's dark, it's sad, but it's also engaging and bittersweet by the end. You really get the whole package. And once again, you get endless replayability. Like all of the other Halo games, you could play this one on 4 different difficulty settings. Easy, like a true Chad, normal, heroic, and legendary. Although it's worth noting that some sections of the game got significantly harder on legendary. The Saber level especially, which I found pretty fun on lower difficulties, can be kind of a nightmare on legendary. And once again, skulls make a comeback. And like ODST, there's still not Easter eggs hidden across the map. Meaning you can once again jump into a mythic campaign of Halo Reach from day one, activating every skull from the main menu. But unlike some of the other games, there was not a special ending to the Legendary campaign. It all concluded the exact same way no matter what difficulty you played it on. But at the very least, you could still take some friends along. Like Halo 3 and ODST before it, the campaign of Reach could be played with up to 3 friends, with 2 players on the same Xbox 360 and 4 players on Xbox Live, meaning the campaign could bring tons of different experiences, making it entertaining every single time. And of course, it wouldn't be a Halo game without multiplayer, which featured plenty of familiar game modes as well as a bunch of new ones, all on nearly a dozen maps. Customization was also huge for the multiplayer, because that Spartan guy you created for the single-player campaign, that was also the guy you'd play as in multiplayer. They went both ways. And by playing Halo Reach's multiplayer, you'd be able to acquire in-game currency to unlock new items to customize your guy. The more you play, the better you'll look. But unlike the multiplayers for previous games, Halo Reach received some criticism for some of the big changes it made. For one thing, instead of every player loading into a match with the exact same guns as everyone else, Reach introduced loadouts. You could customize your starting loadout, choose which guns and abilities you wanted from minute 1, and the more you progressed through multiplayer, the more weapons you could unlock. So the more you played, the better you could start. This was a bit controversial for Halo fans. It seemed to take away from a lot of the strategy of finding the best weapons on the map before the other guys. Instead, it made the multiplayer more random because you didn't know what anyone else was starting with. That, coupled with the game's new reticle bloom mechanic, where shots will become less accurate if fired rapidly, made the multiplayer feel quite different than previous games. This criticism was also extended to the campaign, with plenty of people being critical of how inaccurate weapons would become when rapidly firing. For the first time, there was a notable amount of criticism around a major Halo title. I mean, sure, ODST was criticized for being overpriced, but this was a tiny bit different. This didn't receive the same universal glowing praise that some of the previous games did. But despite that, there were still plenty who had fun with Reach's campaign and multiplayer. Because of that, Halo Reach was massive. It was lauded by fans as one of the best games of the year, and an absolutely fantastic finale to the series so far. And financially, you could not complain about this game's sales. Halo Reach made a whopping $200 million in its first 24 hours, and wound up selling 3.3 million copies in its first month, being only the 3rd game of the entire console generation to sell 3 million copies in a month. And that includes titles released on the PS3 and Nintendo Wii. Overall, Halo Reach became the 3rd best-selling game of the year, trailing only behind Call of Duty Black Ops and Madden NFL 11. Some tough competition, to be sure. But Halo Reach also had some long legs, with even some promotion continuing after the game's release, like a monument trailer featuring a digital statue created for each member of Noble Team to honor their sacrifices. And another trailer was released for the VGAs in December, keeping Reach in the public consciousness. Once again, Bungie had stormed into the industry with a juggernaut, a worldwide hit that was nearly unparalleled in its success. But the unfortunate part was, this would be their last time doing so in this universe. This was the end of an era. Over nearly 10 years and 5 games, Bungie had completely redefined what first-person shooters could be on console. They took formulas and mechanics that worked well enough, and they revolutionized them for the entire industry. They began an all-new era of first-person shooter games, inadvertently leading to the creation of plenty of Halo clones or Halo killers over the years. But what few other FPS games managed to capture was Halo's specific knack for storytelling, world-building, and overall fun. Bungie paved the way for an immersive, enriching, and engrossing gameplay experience that not only saw you fighting cool aliens, but getting you interested in how they worked. I mean, few other game franchises were able to spawn a bunch of spin-off novels, let alone get all of their fans to read all of them, But Halo had the secret sauce, which is exactly why it became a phenomenon. But Bungie did not want to become a Halo machine. They did not want to become a company specifically designed to make more Halo until the heat death of the universe. So instead, they closed out their run by tying everything back to where it began, by looping the entire story back to the very beginning of Halo Combat Evolved. It's a very fitting conclusion, a full-circle approach to the story that is incredibly satisfying. But now, Bungie's off to do something different. They're off to fulfill their destiny, which is a whole other story. For now, Halo is going to change hands, as 343 Industries, still being built from the ground up, are going to take on complete control. They're going to be the ones to see Halo into the future. And little did fans realize, but 343 was already making an impact on the current Halo landscape. 343 Industries had already put their hands on the proverbial Halo pot. They had a bit of an impact on the development of Halo Wars, and they'd also brought along Halo Waypoint, an online service that you could access through the Xbox to get specific Halo news and updates. It was essentially a replacement for Bungie.net, which was obviously going to follow Bungie, not Halo. At the same time, as 2011 got underway, 343 joined forces with Certain Affinity, the development company created by former Bungie employee Max Hoberman, to create the Defiant Map Pack, a new multiplayer map pack for Halo Reach. At the same time, they had a small hand in the ongoing novels. Well, except for 2008's The Cole Protocol, which kinda predates 343. Instead, 343's first marks on the lore were felt in 2011 with the dawn of 2 new book trilogies. Halo Cryptum, written by Greg Bear, kicked off the Forerunners saga, a whole new story set 100,000 years ago, chronicling the story of the Forerunners and the first discovery of the Flood. This book changed things in a big way for Halo lore. It was by far the most intricate telling of the Forerunner story yet, and something that revealed a whole hell of a lot about their history. But it also changes the original intention behind the Forerunners. Now, don't misunderstand, this book doesn't contradict anything that was actually established, but it does make changes from Bungie's original ideas. If Halo 2 had been completed with its full 3-act structure, not a cliffhanger to lead into Halo 3, it would have revealed that the Forerunners were actually ancient humans. Humanity were the ones who built the rings, and now 100,000 years later, they've rediscovered their own history. But this book reveals that the Forerunners are definitively a different race. They are their own species. Instead, ancient humans merely lived simultaneously to them, and at some point got involved in a bit of a war before the Flood showed up and ruined everybody's day. There's a lot of sci-fi history here, and a lot of expansion onto the established backstory and lore of the entire franchise. Then, back in the present story, you had Halo Glasslands, written by Karen Travis. This book kicked off the Kilo 5 trilogy, centering on an all-new group of heroes following the events of Halo 3. This served to bridge the gap between Halo 3 and the next major title in the mainline saga. The marks were being made across the franchise. The transition had been ongoing for some time, but now that Bungie was out, 343 had full clearance to take over, which meant the gears were grinding on their first major project, Halo 4. That's right, their first project out of the gate would be a direct follow-up to Halo 3, kicking off an all-new story. 343 had been putting together a team for some time, obviously including Frank O'Connor, the only holdout from Bungie, as well as Kiki Wolfkill, the executive producer, and Ryan Payton as the creative director. They were also joined by a whole swath of new faces to bring Halo to the next step, including Neil Davidge, who would take over the music of Halo 4 after Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore committed to staying with Bungie. The big question was, how would 343 approach a big Halo title? They had several goals in mind early on. While their central focus was on creating Halo 4, their grand aims were not just limited to the first game. Their goals were to blow the universe wide open, to tell bigger stories and fill out the grand scale of the Halo universe. Halo 4 wasn't just the next game, it was going to be the springboard to launch everything after it. At the same time, they wanted to tell a deeper story about the Master Chief. Master Chief was slowly getting fleshed out over the course of the original trilogy, but so much of his story was within the books. So the team at 343 decided that it was time to really bring that to the forefront in a major game, to make Master Chief a central and human character, kicking off what they called a hero's journey that would carry over an entirely new trilogy and beyond, overall mapping about 10 years for the franchise. 343 also wanted to make Halo 4 their own. It wasn't just about copying what Bungie had done before, it wasn't about porting things into a new game. It was about making new decisions, having a new creative vision. Major aspects like enemies, vehicles, weapons, even Master Chief himself would be redesigned for the new game, all to fit into a new look for the franchise. It was all about doing something different to make Halo 4 completely distinct from the first three, even if it was still a follow-up. And a big part of that came in the idea of adding a new enemy type to the sandbox. The original trilogy didn't just feature the Covenant, you also fought against the Flood. But now, with the Flood conflict ostensibly over, 343 decided to introduce a new enemy type that you'd fight separate from the Covenant. These enemies would be Forerunner in origin, dating back to the long and mysterious lore of the franchise, and they'd be called Prometheans. These machine-like organisms that looked and felt completely different than anything that had been seen before. At the same time, efforts were made to have further unity on all sides of the franchise. During the Bungie years, the games and novels were made very separately. They could all fit into one timeline, but they often stayed in their own lanes and did their own thing. But now, 343 wanted everything to work in tandem. The universe would be more unified than ever, with events from the books carrying into the stories of the games and vice versa. The two ongoing trilogies were the first steps in this, being direct setups for what 343 wanted to do with Halo 4. A lot of these creative decisions were under the stewardship of Ryan Payton, the creative director of Halo 4. Given his background working on the Metal Gear games at Kojima, he wanted to push 343 to the brink and do entirely new and crazy things. He wanted to break the mold. He was especially pushing the team further and further away from making a carbon copy of the original 3 games. Some of his ideas include having an entire level where you didn't shoot anyone, to really change up the flow of gameplay. He wanted to push things so far that the game might not even be called Halo 4. To represent the differences, the game wouldn't really be a direct sequel to Halo 3 in that sense. But these decisions caused issues internally. As exciting and potentially ambitious as these ideas were, they were on one hand drifting too far away from the core of Halo, and on the other hand, probably too ambitious for this new team. Sure, every individual member at 343 was experienced in game design to some capacity, but none of them had worked together as one big unit. This was their first project as a team, and doing so many crazy new things proved to be too risky. The direction Ryan Payton wanted to take the game wasn't really what the team wanted to do, and they realized it also wasn't really what the fans wanted to see. Which is why, in a big shock to the development process, Ryan Payton was eventually demoted to narrative director for Halo 4, no longer having any management over the design team. It was just too much too fast for the new team, which is why Josh Holmes was brought in as a new creative director to right the ship. And boy did he. Within only a few weeks, Halo 4 began to steer back in the right direction. While it still featured plenty of design differences from the other games, it began to resemble traditional Halo a lot more. The development process didn't necessarily start over, but a lot of Ryan Payton's ideas were left by the wayside to create a very different game than what he was proposing. Ultimately, Ryan Payton would leave 343 and Microsoft, eventually starting his own studio to make his own games, while the team at 343 managed to finally settle on the game they wanted to make. A game that was far more explicitly a direct sequel to Halo 3, picking up where Master Chief and Cortana left off and launching them into a whole new story. A story that fans would soon be able to see for themselves, at least in glimpses. Because once again, the clock turned to June 2011, and E3 rolled up to the club like it always does. Every major studio had an appearance, revealing and furthering promotion for various games, and Microsoft was no different, revealing and marketing plenty of games. Most of Microsoft's press conference featured all sorts of other games and promises for the next year of the Xbox 360. But right at the very end, Microsoft decided to pull the curtain back just a little bit on their biggest franchise. It all starts with glowing orange lights. It's nondescript at first. You can't quite place what's going on, until the lights begin to form the shapes of organs, veins, a beating heart. We're inside a person's body. And not just anyone's body, we're inside the Master Chief himself. After who knows how long, the Chief is suddenly awakened once again on board the Forward Unto Dawn. He rushes through the ship, discovering that it has drifted towards an enormous Forerunner planet. Directed by Joseph Kosinski, featuring visual effects by Digital Domain, this trailer didn't show a ton, but it did everything it needed to. It followed up on the legendary ending of Halo 3 and let the entire world know that Master Chief was coming back. For the very first time, fans knew without a shadow of a doubt that Halo 4 was on its way. And with a release date set for holiday 2012, all they could do was get excited to continue the Master Chief's journey once again. All the while, after the change in creative direction, the game's development went much smoother, as the team quickly moved forward to tell this all-new story. A story centering on Master Chief and Cortana. Following up on some of the threads from the previous games, 343 wanted to really play up the dynamic of these two characters and tell a deeply emotional story between them. They didn't want to go for a soap opera feel or anything, but they wanted to take players on an emotional journey that would test both characters in big ways. And a lot of that relied on really homing in on the performances. Following in the footsteps of Halo Reach, Halo 4 once again utilized motion capture technology for the cutscenes, featuring body actors who could get across the physicality of these characters. Bruce Thomas provided performance capture for Master Chief, getting across his size and demeanor, and Mackenzie Mason provided performance and facial capture for Cortana, giving her a rich bevy of emotions to really represent the heart of the story and of Master Chief. And then, of course, neither character is complete without their voice actor. Steve Downes once again returned to the microphone for Master Chief, given plenty more to do in this far more rich and human story. And Jen Taylor returned as Cortana to do the same. Although, weirdly enough, this was actually the first time they directly worked together. In fact, the first time they'd ever been in the same room was during Halo Fest at PAX in August 2011.
Not only is this the first time they've ever sat together on a panel, this is the first time they've ever been in the same room or even met.
But that wasn't all fans got out of Halo Fest, because the entire panel teased more of what Halo 4's story could be about, and also revealed some concept art for the game, revealing new Forerunners structures, some mysterious ships, and even capping it off with a strange new creature at the very end. Speculation ran rampant about what it could be. The new villain? A new enemy type? We'll have to wait to find out. Overall, the machine was moving soundly on Halo 4, but it was not the only thing on 343's plate. I mean, it was the big thing, and what most of the team was working on, but they also had one other project releasing at the end of the year. Also teased during Microsoft's E3 conference with further marketing in the months to follow, 343 in cooperation with Saber Interactive brought along Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. Released on November 15th, 2011, exactly 10 years after the first game hit store shelves with the original Xbox, it was given a complete remaster by 343 and Saber to bring it to the Xbox 360. New textures, updated cutscenes, better sound, re-recorded music, I mean, you got the whole shebang here. All of which would help bring the original game and its story to a new generation of fans, introducing a whole new group of gamers to the story of the Master Chief. Unfortunately, the response from longtime fans wasn't great. For one thing, the new textures came from or were based on a few disparate places. Some textures were lifted directly from Halo 3, with plenty others being lifted from Halo Reach, all to create symmetry with that game's campaign. But while the grittiness and realism worked very well for Halo Reach, it doesn't work as well paired with Combat Evolved, which is a much lighter game tonally. It also comes with some consequences, like the fact that enemies are far harder to see now. Given the more muted color palette, enemies will often blend into the background, which contrasts in a big way from the original, which featured bright and colorful enemies you could spot from a mile away. But I think the biggest detractor to this game's remaster is the fact that it loses a lot of the atmosphere of the original game. Levels like 343 Guilty Spark, where the game introduces the twist villain the Flood, are a lot less scary with the new, brighter textures. Blood that was once strewn across the walls is now much harder to see. In fact, you might miss it entirely. So while the level still works from a gameplay perspective and the game does technically look better than the original, it doesn't look as good. The visuals of the original are still paramount in a lot of ways, and thankfully those visuals are easily accessible with the Anniversary. A simple button push and you can switch back and forth between each version no problem. At the very least, the new cutscenes do bring about an altered version of the Legendary ending. In the original game, upon beating the whole thing on Legendary, you'd see Sergeant Johnson and an Elite hugging it out as the Pillar of Autumn exploded before the Elite grabbed Johnson's ass. Here, the scene is virtually identical. The two of them still hug it out, but now, Johnson grabs the Elite's ass. My oh my, how the turntables. On top of all of that, there are a handful of additions to this game that were not present when it was initially released. For one thing, for the very first time, the game now had online matchmaking for multiplayer. It now had Xbox Live support. Unfortunately, the multiplayer present here wasn't exactly how it was back in 2001. It's not like all of the original maps were lifted and brought online for the first time. Instead, Anniversary's multiplayer was built in the Halo Reach engine. It's essentially a greatest hits map pack, featuring remastered versions of some Halo CE maps, but not all of them. So while it was fun to visit some old favorites online for the first time, it was not as faithful a remaster as some might have hoped. But the multiplayer wasn't the only thing that received changes and updates, because the campaign also received some upgrades on top of its graphical overhaul. For one thing, this game has skulls now. Skulls were never part of the original game. They were an idea implemented in Halo 2. But now that combat evolved is back, 343 and Saber saw fit to add the skulls to the game to give fans a whole new challenge to embark on. Featuring all sorts of new and familiar modifiers like having to melee people to restore your overshield, grunts will explode when they die, or the best one, if you die, you restart the entire mission. For the first time since its release, Halo CE now had a mythic difficulty added to its roster. And for those interested in the larger lore behind the franchise, every anniversary level is now fitted with a terminal. Should you find these, you'll get a little video showcasing a part of Halo's long and detailed history. Most of them are told from the perspective of 343 Guilty Spark, dealing with him being assigned as the monitor of Installation 04, followed by the 100,000 years of loneliness and boredom after the ring's initial activation, all leading to the arrival of the UNSC and the Covenant, and building to the Master Chief's plan to destroy the ring. It's a whole new side to the story, building off of what's in the game, whilst also factoring in ideas from the books and introducing all new stuff, some of which are here to set the stage for Halo 4. Specifically, there are mentions of two mysterious Forerunner characters, the Librarian and the Didact. And during the last terminal, there's even a mention of Prometheans, establishing their existence in the universe before their debut. But not all terminals center around 343 Guilty Spark. The 9th terminal focuses on Captain Keyes and his horrifying realization that he has been corrupted by the Flood, slowly being turned into a proto-Gravemind. All in all, you get a lot of different stuff with these terminals, expanding on the original story whilst also letting you in on the larger world surrounding the first game. So overall, it was a net positive that this game was released. It brought the original Xbox Classic to the current gen console, it brought Halo CE back into gamers' hands, and that's huge. But the remaster itself is far from perfect, and it's unfortunately not the slam dunk for fans to immediately put their trust into 343. There was still an uphill battle to climb for the new dev team, and this wasn't the best showing right out of the gate. If for nothing else, let's hope they can bring something special for their own original title. 2012 was all about getting people excited, getting people wrapped up in the hype of Master Chief and Cortana's return. The dev team at 343 were still working tirelessly behind the scenes, utilizing the power they had for the last year of the Xbox 360's lifespan, while also looking back to the original games to try and figure out how they worked and what could be done to make Halo 4 the best Halo experience it could possibly be. Eventually, in March 2012, promotion really kicked off. In lieu of Bungie's VDocs, 343 instead released behind-the-scenes making-of videos in the months leading up to Halo 4's debut, releasing both on YouTube and Halo Waypoint simultaneously. The first making-of video provided the first good look at the new designs and new ideas behind Halo 4, revealing 343's approach to the game and how they wanted to honor the legacy whilst also moving forward in new ways. Following that, a video titled Composing Worlds was released, showcasing Neil Davidge's approach to the musical score, how he wanted to create an all-new sound that still felt like the Halo fans knew and loved. And this coincided with the release of a sample track for Halo 4, giving fans a first-hand taste of the new music Neil Davidge was composing. But things really began to heat up at E3 in June. Once again, Microsoft had a big showcase, showing off plenty of their upcoming games, which were exciting in their own right, but the real showstopper was Halo. And they knew it, because Halo 4 kicked off the entire press conference with a whopping 7-minute presentation. 7 minutes to get fans more excited than ever for this next chapter. The first 2 minutes of which consisted of a live-action trailer called The Commissioning.
It's been 4 years since the end of the war. And today we send forth a vessel designed for battle, but now repurposed for peace.
This trailer shows off the christening of the new UNSC flagship, the Infinity, the biggest ship in the fleet, being sent out into space for peaceful missions now that the war with the Covenant has concluded. But while this sequence seems happy and hopeful, it is intercut with the horrifying mission after, where the Infinity finds the mysterious Forerunner planet and is violently sucked inside, which all dovetails right into the following 5 minutes of the showcase, a full gameplay demo for Halo 4's campaign. Because now we see Master Chief within the Forerunner planet witnessing the UNSC Infinity crash spectacularly, sending him on a mission to reunite with the UNSC. We see some new and returning weapons, we see some new Covenant troops, but the big thing this demo shows off is the all-new enemy type, the Prometheans. Orange, robot-like creatures with their own abilities, enemy types, even their own weapons that you can take control of. And the whole thing ends with a tease that an ancient evil has awakened, promising that the Master Chief was going to go up against a threat greater than anything he's faced before. All of which showed off a big step forward for Halo. It looked like the same kind of game for sure, but it also looked very different, fulfilling 343's goals of making this their own. And with the release date set for November 6th, 2012, fans were really getting excited now. The Master Chief was coming back. He was almost ready to continue the fight. But what if you wanted to get your hands on the game a bit early? Well, luckily for anyone attending the Rooster Teeth Expo in July 2012, you would get access to play Halo 4's multiplayer before anyone else. From here, marketing only began to skyrocket. 343 released 3 more behind-the-scenes videos in September and October 2012, revealing new details on various aspects of the game. A Hero Awakens centers on the new approach to Master Chief, the motion capture, the vocal performance, all the while honing in on the promise of a more emotional story with him and Cortana. Return of the Forerunners reveals the team's design influences and overall approach to the new Promethean enemies, all the while revealing what they'll do during gameplay to make them unique. And Infinity Multiplayer reveals, of course, some details on Halo 4's multiplayer, which the team made an express attempt to tie into the campaign in some way. You know, the multiplayer in the previous Halo games was completely separate from the single-player campaign. They weren't linked at all. But here, 343 saw fit to try and give some kind of explanation as to why a bunch of Spartans would try to kill each other, which is why the multiplayer modes would now be known as war games in the game's main menu. But that wasn't the only multiplayer experience fans could expect with Halo 4. While there wouldn't be a Firefight mode this time around, 343 promised something new with Spartan Ops, a 4-player cooperative game mode that would tell its own cinematic story set after the events of Halo 4's main campaign. Over nearly a dozen episodes, this co-op campaign would extend over several weeks, even breaking into January and February of 2013. Promising that Halo 4 would ultimately come with 2 major campaign experiences. You had the main story with Master Chief, and then a follow-up detailing even more to the universe following his return. On top of that, in the final weeks leading up to Halo 4's release, promotional tie-ins were abound for the new game. Following in the footsteps of the last few games, Halo 4 once again made its presence known on all levels. Gotta make sure you sell Halo 4 with as many Mountain Dew bottles as possible. Hell, even Jeff Keighley got involved in what I'm sure is one of the most soul-sucking interviews he's ever done. Love that guy. And at the same time, 2 launch trailers were released in the final weeks of October. The first, titled Scanned, was actually produced by David Fincher, featuring both live-action and CG sequences directed by Tim Miller. And this trailer is quite haunting, showing some mysterious alien figures scanning the Master Chief and looking into his memories. We get to see the Chief's childhood, but we also see him being captured and inducted into the Spartan 2 program, augmented into a super soldier in these horrifying sequences. All before flashing to the present day where we see him fighting against Prometheans and the mysterious new villain for Halo 4. And following that, a more traditional gameplay trailer was released on October 23rd, showing off more cinematic footage than anything before, revealing more details on the story, all to get fans more excited than ever for this return to mainline Halo glory.
Humanity stands
as the greatest threat in the galaxy. The Forerunners have returned.
But while a lot of Halo 4's promotional efforts were quite traditional, some E3 showcases, some trailers here and there was one part of the promotional efforts right at the end that no other game has had the luxury to accomplish. 343 and Microsoft essentially made a whole movie to promote Halo 4. No, that's not a joke. I mean, not really. From October 5th to November 2nd, 5 15-minute live-action films were released on Halo Waypoint. Now, that might not technically be considered a movie, but all 5 shorts could be seamlessly combined into one 90-minute story. In essence, this was the very first Halo live-action movie. A movie that was aptly called Halo 4: Forward Unto Dawn. This movie kicks off with the title ship The Forward Unto Dawn, still drifting in the sea of space, with Cortana watching over the cryotube holding Master Chief. She's been sending distress calls ever since the ending of Halo 3, but now, after 4 years in space, Commander Lasky of the UNSC Infinity has finally received one. Which means it's time for a 90-minute flashback from Lasky's time at the Academy. The movie's not about the events post-Halo 3. It's about the introduction of this new character who's going to be important to Halo 4's story. It follows him and several other cadets as they train to fight off against human insurrectionists. But over the course of the story, they discover secret programs within the UNSC. Programs for far more advanced types of soldiers. And eventually, their training gets cut off when their academy is the site of one of the first Covenant attacks. It provides some proper good horror sequences where the Covenant immediately arrive to wreak havoc. It's the first time people really discover their existence, and they're immediately devastating. You even get a horror sequence where the cadets are hiding in the weapons locker as an invisible elite skulks around in search of them. But the whole thing ultimately comes together with about 20 minutes of non-stop Halo action. Because while the last few cadets believe they're about to be snuffed out, they're saved by none other than... That's right, it's the Master Chief. I knew there had to be a reason why Lasky was flashing back to this particular story. Now, he and the other cadets join Master Chief to escape the planet as the Covenant begin to wipe it out. There are big encounters with Jackal snipers, some elites here and there, and of course, the whole thing ends with a confrontation with a hunter. It's fun. But as a movie, I'm not sure if this really works on its own. I don't know if people completely unfamiliar with the world would get anything out of it. But as a small piece to a larger puzzle, it's a fairly successful live-action story. Easily the most ambitious live-action outing the franchise has ever attempted, even if some of the shorter promotional efforts for the older games were a bit more successful. Critical reception followed the same lines, with most critics and audiences giving the movie solid enough reviews, but criticizing the cliched characters and especially the slow burn first half. It never managed to break beyond its intended audience, which is unfortunate, but it does provide at least a few cool moments for the universe. And the whole thing ends with present-day Lasky finally answering the distress call, sending the UNSC Infinity and a whole fleet of ships into slipspace to find Master Chief once and for all, leading right into the main events of Halo 4. And with its conclusion, fans of Halo only had one thought cross their minds. Halo 4 had finally arrived. After 5 years since Master Chief's story concluded back in Halo 3, it was time to step back into the Mjolnir armor, back into the helmet of a Spartan 2, and experience the first step in an all-new journey. 343 was here to kick off a new trilogy of games, a new era for Halo, an era called the Reclaimer Saga. And like the previous games, Halo 4 was also released in a couple different ways. There was of course the standard Xbox 360 copy, but then you could also get a limited edition with a special case and even some bonus features, like guaranteed access to future Halo 4 multiplayer map packs, or the full Forward Unto Dawn movie featuring some behind-the-scenes footage. Unfortunately, there was no Legendary Edition this time around, which was a bit disappointing to some. You know, the big Legendary boxes had become a staple for the franchise, but this time, fans had to make do with just the limited edition. Thankfully for fans though, early reviews for Halo 4 were absolutely stellar. All of the major outlets praised 343 for making perhaps the greatest Halo game yet. And even those who said it wasn't the greatest, they did say it was at least a worthy successor to Bungie's franchise, and something that would get them excited for this new journey. And once again, fan attendance was huge. Midnight events were held across the country, with people lining up around the block to get their hands on the next major Halo story before anyone else. The clock had now turned to November 6th, 2012. So plug in that Xbox 360 disc and grab your controller, because 343 Industries has arrived to kick off the next chapter of Halo. Four years have passed since the ending of Halo 3, and the Forward Unto Dawn is a completely different ship than it was before. But that's beside the point. Something has begun to scan the ship. Something has begun to change. Because of that, Cortana finally deems it time to awaken the Master Chief once again. After 4 years in cryo, Master Chief is thrust back into the action as the Forward Unto Dawn is sucked into this massive Forerunner planet. A planet known as Requiem. Apparently a shield world, a much larger creation than any of the Halo rings. Its scale is unmatched. And so now you must fight across Requiem, facing off against new and familiar enemies in this all-new story. And right off the bat, you'll notice that some things are a bit different. For one thing, Master Chief talks during gameplay. Now, this was starting to be phased in during Halo 3 ODST, but it's the first time the Chief himself has talked during gameplay. Which means that in the first level of this game's campaign, Chief probably talks more than in all 3 of the other games combined. You can now see your hand activating consoles instead of just pressing a button and things light up. And there's a QuickTime event early on. But those are the small changes. They really only prime us for the much larger changes 343 has implemented in this game. One of the big things is Master Chief has been redesigned. Sure, he still looks like the Master Chief with the iconic helmet and orange visor, but inexplicably between games he changed suits. Or did he? Because a flashback at the start of this game seems to suggest that this is the armor the Master Chief has always worn. Not to mention, this armor still has a big scar on the chest, which was also present during Halo 3. So, it's safe to say that within the fiction of the universe, the suit hasn't changed. It just looks a lot different now. The Covenant forces also look a lot different. Each enemy type in the Covenant has been redesigned, all to give them a scarier, more alien look. Grunts no longer have their characteristic gas masks, instead their methane comes through the nose. And elites are far more brutish this time around. They're a bit bigger, they're a bit stronger, they feel more monstrous, which is strange because this universe already has a brute enemy type, but this game decided not to use them and instead has made the elites more like the brutes. Jackals without their shields look a lot more like elites at first glance. It's weird. The Covenant also don't speak English here. Instead, they make garbled alien sounds. Now, this was implemented in Halo Reach, so this is likely a natural continuation, but after 2 games in a row, I'm starting to miss the funny dialogue the grunts would have during battle. Those little guys always had something fun to say.
Bad guy, 12 o'clock. Is anybody wearing a watch?
The music this time around is also very different. It's overall completely original, featuring an all-new soundscape to take players into the sci-fi atmosphere. Gone are the grooves and chants of the original scores. Things are far more intense and hopped up on adrenaline here. Now, there are some ideas that make a comeback, even if they are very different. For one thing, there are some tracks that feature vocal work, harkening back to the original Gregorian chants. But the real kick for this new soundtrack is the fact that it mostly just fades into the background. It's a soundtrack that is easy to tune out as you're playing. In the previous games, you felt the music. At every turn, when things kicked off and those big themes started playing, it elevated every moment. You don't quite get that same sense here. But what's weird is that that is entirely not the fault of the music, because when you listen to some of these tracks on their own, you realize that there are some genuine bangers in here. I mean, I brought up Legacy earlier, but you also have 117, the new theme from Master Chief, which brings about a very somber yet still heroic sound. It just comes down to how the music is used. It's not used to elevate or expand on certain sequences within the game. It more feels like it's put in so that there's never a dull moment of silence, and also so that it's not too distracting. It feels tailor-made to be tuned out, which I think does it a huge disservice. But that's also not universal. There are moments here where the music is allowed to shine. The occasional bit where the new score is able to come out swinging. Like during the final level of the campaign where you fly a broadsword, a new vehicle, across the enemy ship to disable its artillery. Not to mention, the score does bring back some slight motifs from the original games. At one point in the story, you visit a station orbiting Installation 03, another Halo ring. And when you arrive, you can hear the original Gregorian chants very slightly. At the same time, during Master Chief's new theme 117, you can hear the percussive elements of the original Halo theme worked in a little bit. And of course, there is a whole new reprise of the track Unforgotten from Halo 2, this time reusing the name Never Forget from Halo 3. It's always great when that track pops up. It really drives home the emotions of what this game is trying to do. But then of course you have the biggest change implemented by 343 in this game, the introduction of a whole new enemy. Partway through this game's story, we're introduced to the Prometheans, characters of Forerunner origin who are now gonna wreak havoc on you for the rest of the campaign. They come in three major types. You got the Crawler, a four-legged creature who can climb on walls, charge at you, and also shoot you with their face. Knights are the main soldiers with built-in shields, and they can deploy Watchers, floating enemies that can shield knights and catch grenades in midair, throwing them right back at you. It's nice to have a new enemy type featured in the Halo sandbox. The Covenant are great fun, but even they can get stale after a while. The unfortunate thing is, the Prometheans here are definitely a little undercooked. For one thing, all three enemy types are bullet sponges. There aren't interesting ways to tackle these enemies. You'll just be unloading clips into them until they go down. This is especially tough for the Watchers, who are super difficult to take down if you don't have a precision weapon of some kind. And the Knights are just reskinned elites. They have shields, they have swords sometimes. The biggest difference is that they can teleport. But that's ultimately the worst difference, because you'll find yourself nearly able to take a knight down, but then they'll teleport away. Now you have to find them again, and once you do, their shields are back up, so you gotta unload on them all over again. The undercooked nature of the Prometheans also extends to their new weapons, because with a new enemy type comes an all-new arsenal of guns to take them down. The only issue is pretty much every single one is just a reskin of an existing weapon in the sandbox, either from this game or previous games. The bolt shot is just the plasma pistol again, except much weaker. The suppressor is just a submachine gun or assault rifle. The scatter shot is just a shotgun. The light rifle is essentially a battle rifle crossed with a DMR, able to shoot 3 shots normally but 1 shot while scoped. And then the binary rifle is a sniper. All of this is compounded by the fact that the Promethean weapons provide no real benefit to separate them from UNSC or Covenant weapons. In the previous games, Covenant weapons, or more specifically plasma weapons, were separated from UNSC weapons because they could cut through shields much faster. UNSC weapons might be able to take down bad guys, but plasma weapons could speed up the process against shields. But a benefit like that isn't really felt here. These are just average weapons. To give some praise to the new weapons though, they do look pretty neat. It's fun to see new things in your hand, and every time you pick up a new weapon, it transforms over your hand with some pretty sick animation. And on top of that, there's the incineration cannon, which is pretty sick. It's kind of a rocket launcher crossed with an exploding grenade launcher. It shoots these big projectiles. It's a lot of fun. And the crawler enemy type is solid. They're quite distinct from anything else, so they're alright in my book. And overall, it is very fun to have new weapons and enemies in the sandbox. But the main reason you'll be using these new weapons is not because of any real benefit they have, but more that ammo's short and you're going to be finding a lot of these guys on the battlefield. But all of this begs a very important question. How do we view change? Sounds a little existential, but let me get into it. During Bungie's tenure with the franchise, they made changes every single game. But when the original creator of a thing makes changes, it's viewed as, oh, they wanted to improve upon a thing that they made that wasn't working. But now that 343 is here, and they're the ones making changes, it's viewed more as, oh, they're changing things that the other guys did that they didn't like. It feels different, and a little more, not sinister really, but like a few steps removed from that. It feels like a slight against the original creation when a new person comes in to make changes, even if that's totally not the case, which I don't believe it is here. But even with the best intentions at heart from 343, there is inevitably that feeling of you wanted to fix what others made, which feels a little more off-putting. And I think it's for that reason that some of 343's changes here were given pushback from some fans. Some things feel like change for the sake of change, which immediately makes the phrase, if it ain't broke, come to mind. 343 obviously wanted to make Halo their own. They wanted to create additions and changes that would separate these games from Bungie's entries. And I think on one hand that is entirely admirable. It is entirely worth a shot. But because they're not Bungie, they are under so much more scrutiny. If Bungie made the same choices, it's possible that the criticism would still be heard, but it would be a lot different. In fact, it's not a stretch to say that Bungie might have made a lot of these changes on their own, considering how much of Halo 4 is a direct extension of what Bungie left off with in Halo Reach. A darker, more gritty visual aesthetic, the Covenant don't speak, in-game dialogue from the player character, a new enemy type. While it's unlikely that things would have looked exactly the same, it's possible that Bungie would have made similar decisions. The real question I'm asking is, would people have reacted as negatively if the changes were made by Bungie? We'll never truly know, but I do think there is a difference in reaction and an increase in scrutiny for 343 in this scenario. They're fighting an uphill battle. But none of this matters anyway because change is bad and cringe and should never happen ever in the history of the world. So let's dive into what's the same. Well, despite everything that's different, this is still Halo at its core. You're still fighting bad guys, you still have the main Covenant enemy types, the elites, grunts, jackals, even hunters make a comeback here. The enemy AI is still solid, giving you plenty to do during firefights. And you still have a wide variety of weapons to choose from. I mean, we already mentioned the Promethean weapons, and they're joined by familiar UNSC weapons like the assault rifle, the Magnum, the battle rifle with an an all-new skin, the DMR, the rocket launcher, the Spartan laser. There's also a bunch of new UNSC weapons like the SAW, this super powerful heavy machine gun, the sticky launcher, which can shoot a sticky grenade at enemies, set to explode on your command. And then there's the railgun, which can dice up enemies like nobody's business. Covenant weapons also make a comeback with new and returning armaments. You got the plasma pistol, you got the needler, you got the Covenant carbine, the concussion rifle, the beam rifle, the fuel rod gun, and they're joined by the newcomer, the storm rifle, a Covenant machine gun that is the most common weapon among elites, which means it replaces the plasma rifle. Kind of a shame, that weapon was pretty iconic, but it's not in this game. Sad. But some of the iconic weapons are still here. You can't have a Halo game without the energy sword. And despite the fact that the brutes aren't around in this game, there is one moment where you can pick up a gravity hammer. Gotta love that thing. Vehicle sections, a huge staple for Halo, also make a comeback here, with plenty of familiar vehicles. You got the Ghost, you got the Banshee, you got the Warthog. There are 2 big sections with the Scorpion tank. You even get to fly around in a Pelican at one point. Granted, it's just a means of transporting you from one location to another, and you really only get to shoot at phantoms, but hey, you're still flying a Pelican. Then you have the new vehicles like the Broadsword as mentioned, and Halo 4's premier new addition to the vehicle sandbox, the Mantis. A 2-legged artillery with guns on one arm and missiles on the other. This thing can stomp through the battlefield and dice up any enemies in its path. It's pretty sick. During Halo 4's story, you will also encounter a handful of new characters. The only returning faces this time are Master Chief and Cortana, so the UNSC is filled out by a bunch of new blood. You have Captain Del Rio, who you slowly realize is not the greatest commander around. Bro just does not have any respect for Master Chief, which is crazy considering who Master Chief is. Like, this dude saved the galaxy, man.
I don't know about you, but I usually like a little more intel with my intel.
You have the affable nice guy Commander Lasky, obviously introduced in the Forward Unto Dawn movie, and then you have the introduction of the Spartan 4s, led by Sarah Palmer. Spartan 4s are the next generation of Spartans, this time adult volunteers who've been genetically altered. Although since they're altered as adults, they don't quite match the size and strength of the old Spartan 2s like Master Chief. Though that doesn't stop Palmer from gloating a little bit.
I thought you'd be taller.
The sound design in this game is also pretty solid. Practically every weapon sound has been redesigned. Things feel much heavier than before. There's a lot more texture to the sound. This is especially true of the sniper rifle, which is given a lot more punch with its shots here. Whenever Chief moves in a cutscene, you can hear the bending of the leather underneath, the movement of the armor plates. But there are a couple downsides to the sound redesign here. For one thing, the battle rifle sounds a lot weaker than it did before. And the plasma pistol doesn't really sound all that much like a plasma pistol. And then you have the biggest change of all, the overshield recharging sound. Here's what it sounded like in every previous game. And here's what it sounds like now. Of all the things to change about Halo 4's sound, the recharge was not one of them. Rest in peace, old recharge sound. I hope to hear you again one day. The visuals, however, are fantastic. This might just be the best looking game on the Xbox 360. Like the previous Halo games, you have big moments here like when the area opens up and you get to see the glory of Requiem with your own eyes. There's some more intricate level design, like walking through intense foliage. Skyboxes are still fantastic, especially when you're inside the planet and you can look up to see the whole thing above you. It's quite spectacular and definitely fits the larger franchise. There's even a moment where you can see a halo ring out of a window, and at the end, you can see the Earth directly above you. It's crazy. Forerunner technology has gotten a massive upgrade this time as well. Things are much brighter, there are a lot of floating pieces to the architecture, the textures are more detailed and intricate, with big moving structures and lots of lens flares. I mean, this game goes a little crazy on the lens flares sometimes. Then you have big set pieces like one entire level that revolves around this massive UNSC vehicle known as the Mammoth. The whole level sees you following this thing from set piece to set piece. It's really the vehicle for the whole mission. It's a new idea, but one that's entirely welcome to the franchise. Sometimes, though, set pieces can feel a little claustrophobic. One of the things that made the original Halo games stand out was their use of wide-open arenas. They were some of the first FPS games to take these big open areas and still make them fun to fight in. But there isn't as much of that here. Halo 4 is often trapped within corridors, or at least larger geometry that surrounds you. It feels much smaller and tighter moment to moment. There are some moments where things open up, but they seem fewer and farther between. It's just one of the little things that takes the game a step down from its predecessors. But there is something about this game that takes it a step up from its predecessors, and that's the story. It's probably not too hyperbolic to say that Halo 4 might tell the best story of any of these games. It really dives into the emotional core of our main characters and tells a story about them that we haven't seen before. Although the story this time comes with some caveats, because it kind of feels a little less accessible. For the first time, a Halo game has one singular antagonist. Throughout this game's story, you're facing off against this guy, the Didact, a forerunner from the distant past who has control over the Promethean army. In fact, it's revealed that the Prometheans are actually converted from humans. And now, the Didact wants to get his hands on the Composer to convert the rest of humanity into his Promethean army. He even immediately sways the Covenant to his side, meaning both the Covenant and the Prometheans are working against you, which sends you into the last levels with purpose. You gotta stop the Didact from destroying humanity. But there's so much more detail to this character that's really easy to miss. If you're playing this game normally, just blasting through the campaign, you probably won't have much to really say about this guy. He's just a big evil guy doing big evil things. A lot of this guy's characterization is hidden within the ongoing Forerunner saga books, but also within the terminals that you'll find on each level. These terminals are easy to miss, but if you find them all, you'll get so much more insight into this guy that you did not get close to having during the main campaign. These terminals take us back over 100,000 years into the past, telling the story of the Didact and his wife, the Librarian. The Didact believed, through his own pride, that the Forerunners would bear the mantle of responsibility for the universe. They'd be its divine protectors. But all signs began to suggest that humanity would bear the mantle, not the Forerunners. This caused great pain for the Didact, and he saw fit to wage war on the humans, until he realized what humanity was really fighting against: the Flood. The rest of the Forerunners created the Halo Array to wipe out all life in the galaxy and stop the Flood outbreak. But the Didact had another plan: to use the Composer to convert organic life into his mechanical Prometheans so they could no longer be susceptible to the Flood's infestation. But the other Forerunners and the Librarian did not take kindly to that plan, and eventually the Librarian herself locked the Didact away in a prison on board Requiem. Not long after, the Halo rings were activated, the galaxy was wiped clean, and the Flood was destroyed. But the Didact, stuck in his prison, was able to survive. Now, with humanity back in space, the Didact has been awakened once again, and is set to complete his work of converting everyone into mechanical Prometheans once again. After having seen all of the terminals, suddenly cutscenes like this where the Master Chief is talking to the librarian make a whole hell of a lot more sense. Although it is a weird juxtaposition to see Master Chief get lore dumped on. He's the action man, the guy who's gonna shoot first and ask questions later. But here he is getting informed on the deeper intricacies of Halo lore. But this issue of story accessibility is not just limited to the Didact, it also extends to the Covenant. Because I'm sure you're asking, why are we fighting the Covenant again? Didn't humanity make a truce with them after Halo 3? Well, yes. But if you go ahead and read the currently ongoing Kilo 5 trilogy, you'll get let in on the fact that Covenant Zealot groups started popping up after Halo 3, and that's who you're fighting here. None of that information is in the campaign proper, so you better go read up if you want to know what's really happening there. But despite those accessibility issues, the central core of the story here is what really hits hard. The central story of Master Chief and Cortana. The game delves far deeper into Master Chief's humanity. It's kind of an ongoing question here as to whether he has any humanity left.
Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
There's even a whole opening cutscene that delves into this a little bit, as an ONI officer interrogates Dr. Halsey about the Spartan program.
Do not underestimate them. But most of all, do not underestimate him.
But like with all Halo games so far, Cortana is really the heart of the story. She's the more human half to Master Chief, and this game takes great strides to tell the next chapter in what you can call a love story. Because Cortana's getting old. She's beginning to suffer from rampancy. As mentioned earlier, given how smart AIs like Cortana are made, they're constantly learning new information. But at a certain point, they'll learn too much information for their own good. And they will, as this game actually says, think themselves to death.
We literally think ourselves to death.
This begins to happen after about 7 years, and Cortana's been active for 8. So, over the course of the story, Cortana slowly breaks down more and more. She begins to succumb to the rampancy as it takes over her programming. The whole story is essentially about Chief wanting to keep Cortana safe, as he always does, all the while fighting an uphill battle. He even goes to blows with Captain Del Rio about Cortana in one of the game's biggest cutscenes.
I am ordering you
to surrender that AI!
No, sir.
And it also gives Cortana a sense of mortality. She really begins to confront the fact that she's not going to be around forever.
I can give you over 40,000 reasons why I know that sun isn't real. I know it because the emitter's Rayleigh effect is disproportionate to its suggested size. I know it because its stellar cycle is more symmetrical than that of an actual star. But for all that, I'll never actually know if it looks real. If it feels real.
Master Chief, however, is in full belief that he'll be able to save her if they can just get back to Dr. Halsey on Earth. He's fully committed to the idea that Cortana's gonna make it out of this. But first, the two of them have to stop the Didact, which leads to the final campaign mission where the Didact begins to use his composer on Earth. Master Chief has a nuclear warhead, and you fight off waves upon waves of Prometheans to get through to destroy the Didact and the composer once and for all. With help from Cortana, who ultimately splits her rampant personalities in a final stand to stop the Didact. Unfortunately, the final boss fight is really lame. To be fair, Halo's never been great at boss fights. I mean, look no further than the bit in Halo 2 where you just punch the Prophet of Regret to death. The boss fights there were undercooked to say the least. And here, potentially in an effort to avoid a bad boss fight, the ultimate moment where you stop the Didact comes with a QuickTime event. It's arguably better than the tedious boss fights of Halo 2, but it's not very satisfying. But the Didact is defeated. You trigger the nuclear warhead, all to destroy the Didact ship and the Composer to save Earth once and for all. But you are at ground zero, the center of this explosion to save humanity. Is this the end of the Master Chief? Well, no. Because Cortana, in a last-ditch effort, managed to shield you from the explosion. Alright, the Master Chief managed to make it out. But Cortana won't. This was a sacrifice play. A last resort.
I'm not coming with you this time.
In one final moment, Cortana finally got to pay Master Chief back for all of their years of service together. After years of Master Chief saving Cortana from foes, even saving her from the Gravemind in Halo 3, she got to return the favor. But it's the last thing she'll do, which means the game ends on an emotional note. Cortana will succumb to her rampancy and leave the Chief forever. Where the other games usually ended on a big action high, this game instead sees the Chief mourn. He just lost his best friend. His girlfriend? Wife? Who knows? And he's forced to reconcile with that, all as a way of humanizing him more than ever. Despite the cool-looking armor, there's still a human underneath it all, and this game goes a long way to show it, all by essentially killing Cortana.
Our duty as soldiers is to protect humanity, whatever the cost.
You say that like soldiers and humanity are two different things. And soldiers aren't machines. We're just people.
She said that to me once. About being a machine.
And finally, the epilogue of the game sees humanity rebuild after the Didact's attack. It sees the Master Chief standing significantly taller than Sarah Palmer, that's sick, and with narration from the Didact playing over the scene, we watch as the Master Chief takes his armor off for the first time since Halo 2.
Think of my acts as you will, but do not doubt the reality. The reclamation has already begun, and we are hopeless to stop it.
Now, as cool as that moment is, I gotta say, Chief's gotta stink, man. I mean, bro put on that armor at the start of Halo 2, then went through the events of that game and Halo 3, which took place over the course of a couple months. Then he was in cryo for 4 years and went through the events of this game. Like, take a shower, bro. But that right there is Halo 4. Halo 4 is an interesting one. On a lot of levels, it's a very successful game. It tells perhaps the best story in the entire series, it has fun gameplay, but the differences with the other games begin to stack up, at least for hardcore fans. Prometheans were heavily criticized, their weapons were criticized, all of the design changes were rejected by longtime fans, especially the Elite designs. A lot of fans were very vocal about how the Elites look much worse this time around. But the most shocking criticism came from the multiplayer side of things. Multiplayer and Halo go hand in hand, and it's consistently the thing that keeps fans playing even years after a game has been released. But Halo 4's multiplayer was widely considered to be the worst of the entire series. Customization was still a big feature for Halo 4, allowing you to create your own Spartan, but customization was slightly less expansive than Halo Reach, and you could no longer play as an Elite. That was a big sting for fans, especially those who loved running around as a Sangheili in the previous games. And once again, Halo 4 featured loadouts. Just like Halo Reach, you could choose what weapons you could start with in every multiplayer match. Then there was a kill streak type mechanic implemented into the game, where if you got enough kills in a row, you could call in a power weapon for yourself. This really took out the strategy. Where previous games saw the power weapons strewn across the map for anyone to retrieve, now it was far more built into whoever got the most kills. The new armor abilities change up gameplay similarly to how they changed up Halo Reach, and the progression system was also quite different from previous Halo titles. In previous games, progression was pretty simple. You had an in-game rank, and even some in-game currency that allowed you to purchase new cosmetics to customize your guy. But here, this game goes all in on you having a career as a Spartan 4. With each match completed, with each challenge accomplished, you'd not only unlock cosmetics, but weapons that you could add to your loadout. Meaning the more you played and the better you were, the more you could customize and dominate the battlefield. And no matter how badly you played during a level, you always got experience points, which meant that leveling up was less about skill in the game and more about how much time you played. All of this made the multiplayer feel a lot less like Halo and a lot more like Call of Duty. It wasn't really what longtime fans of Halo were looking for, which is why Halo 4's multiplayer turnout wound up dropping off rather significantly shortly after launch. It was the biggest player drop-off for any Halo game. Fans were just not coming back to the multiplayer as much as they were for previous games. And this sent a big message back to 343, who wanted nothing more than to really please longtime fans of Halo. They didn't quite knock it out of the park this time. While critical reception to the game was incredibly positive and plenty of fans enjoyed what 343 had to offer, the critical side of the fandom was louder than they had ever been before. And while some of it might not have been justified, some of it was justified. Halo 4 felt quite different, and not always for the better. But despite the slightly heavier critical reception, the game was still immensely successful. Like all of the previous titles, Halo 4 stormed onto store shelves like a riot. In its first 24 hours, the game made a whopping $220 million, surpassing the first 24 hours of Halo Reach. And ultimately, it managed to become the third best-selling game of the year, only falling behind Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and Madden NFL 13. Where have I heard this before? But Halo's still on the podium, still kicking ass and taking names like always. So in a lot of respects, Halo 4 was a success. It successfully kicked off a new story for the Master Chief, told a far more emotional journey about the character, and did new things with the franchise to keep it staying afloat. And it was still endlessly replayable. Like the other games, you could once again play the campaign with up to 4 people total, and you could switch the difficulty from easy, normal, heroic, and legendary. And of course, like some of the previous games, if you beat the whole thing on legendary, you'd get a secret bonus ending. This time, during the final cutscene as Master Chief takes his suit off, you get one final tidbit that no other difficulty would give you.
The reclamation has already begun, and we are hopeless to stop it.
Skulls also made a comeback. They're still not hidden throughout the levels, but they once again alter the campaign with new and old challenges to create the 5th mythic difficulty. You know, playing the game on Legendary with all skulls on. That was the real challenge. Halo 4 was a hit. It was a hugely successful game that brought the franchise firmly into the center of the pop culture conversation. And because of that, strides were immediately made to continue the story going forward. The story of Master Chief was going to continue. The whole series was going to continue. And it was going to be bigger than ever. The Reclaimer saga had officially begun, and 343 had successfully taken the reins on the franchise to carry it into the future. But some of the design changes would hang over them like a shadow. Longtime fans would continue to be critical as 343 entered one of the most complicated chapters in the entire franchise's history. We have just entered an all-new, deeply strange era of Halo. An era that will take us far into the future on uncertain terms. An era that will take us into the infinite.